A Court of Fairies and Fiction. Akafath Girls Podcast. Hosts Mel Liv and Aka. A bookish theory and discussion podcast for the Akatar, Crescent City, and Tug series, as well as other romantasy books. Special episode, interview with Natalie Van Sistine.
Molly, why don't we start by introducing our guest, and then I'm gonna totally fangirl over here. So
go ahead. Anyways, hi everybody. Welcome to season 3 of A Court of Fairies and Fiction podcast. Our first guest of 2025, Natalie Van Sistine. Yes. Do you want to tell everybody who she voice acts?
Yes. So you have two really big parts. First and foremost, you are Nesta Archeron, correct, in the Akatar series.
Yes, love Nesta.
Us too. And you're your forger in Spy Family, right?
Yep. I and the funny thing is I book them within a couple months of each other too. So that was just a very very cool experience to have those back to back.
Oh my gosh. I know that a lot of our viewers, we listen and watch Spy Family. There's an anime TV show out. And we just love you so much as Yor. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about your experience as Yor Forger?
Yeah, I mean, it's wild because I've been doing voiceover since 2009, and the idea of working in anime was always just kind of that's never going to happen. And then as I started progressing in my career and I met more people and I started networking and they started doing anime, I was like, oh, well, that's how you do it. That might be feasible. Maybe I could do that someday. And I got cast in some smaller things, but I was really starting to feel like, I don't know if the anime stuff's going to go anywhere. What I book primarily is video games. And so I figured the game industry is really where I'm headed. That's where I feel the most comfortable. I don't know if this whole anime thing's going to really pan out. And then the audition for Spy Family came through. I was on the general audition list at Crunchyroll at the time. I'd done some smaller stuff. I'd had some supplementary parts, but nothing super major. I'd done some bigger things with some of the satellite studios who were a bit more familiar with my work and willing to give me a chance to try some bigger stuff. At Crunchyroll, none of the directors at that point had really leaned in on me yet. Which is fine. That takes time, and that's totally a normal part of it. So I remember that audition coming through, and I had heard of it. I knew it was kind of like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but anime. But then, they randomly have a telepathic daughter, and which is such a great mix. It's just so well written, so well handled. And so I remember getting the audition, and I was immediately like, okay, I probably will not be my vocal type. I normally don't play kids, so I was like, okay, I think the mom's probably the one I'm going to go for. And I remember reading for that one, and I was thinking Angelina Jolie type, so I was like, okay, I know that kind of cool, calm, assassin-y type voice. I'm gonna go with that. And I didn't realize, and I was reading the audition copy going, I'm like, she's not Angelina Jolie. There's a little bit of that. And they had the "may I have the honor of taking your life" line, which she's really well known for. She always asks permission to kill people, which is wonderful.
I love it.
Just this whole process. And but I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I got really lucky that my wife is the ADHD book buyer of the house, and someone had told her to buy Spy Family one. And I was like, we have the volume right on the bookshelf. I'm going to put a pause on this audition really quick. I'm going to go read this because this is a big enough audition that I want to make a really good impression. I want it to go really good. And I read the first volume and I went, oh no, this is so good. I fell in love, and that's the thing you can't do with auditions. You can't get attached. You have to do the send and forget thing. But by the time I read the volume and then I went in the booth and I was like, oh, okay, now I understand the context. Now I get the sense of the character. And by the end of the audition, I was like, that was so fun. Oh my goodness, the show is going to be so good. And I need to make peace right now that I'm not going to be I have to do that mentally. So I had a whole moment in the booth here, and I was just like, get it together. It's not going to happen. Maybe you'll get a supplementary character. Maybe you'll get a guest star type thing, but you're not going to be this character. You need to understand that. And then the whole weekend, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I'm like, I'm going to be an emotional wreck when this cast list gets announced, because I'm sure whoever gets it, they'll be amazing, but I would have loved to be in it.
Even voice actors and we get too attached. So
oh no. And I normally don't do this. This was such a rare case where I've never gotten this attached to an audition before. God. And I was like, I have to get over this. This is not okay. And I think that it was I sent the audition in on like a Thursday or Friday. I do adaptive writing for anime too sometimes. So I had a script that was due that weekend that I had turned in that Monday night, and I had stayed up late to do it. And I overslept really far. Like I didn't have anything going on the next day, so I just stayed in bed at like 11:30. And I had a missed call and a text from one of the producers at Crunchyroll. And you could see on my Apple Watch that my heart rate went up to about like 150.
Oh my God.
Hour while I was waiting for him to call me back. And I thought, like, maybe I got a call back. I don't know. Like, what's happening? And then he called me and he's like, yeah, director picked you. You got the part. Just to make sure you were down for this. So
Huge celebration.
that was amazing. And the really, really cool thing is that my co-star who plays Anya, Megan Shipman, we initially connected and we didn't know each other super, super well. She is a huge ahhhhhhhhhh fan. And literally the previous message I had from her was her gushing to me about how excited she was that I was in the graphic audio production. And so we literally went from
my God.
Here's our initial touch point of ahhhhhhhh, and now we're going into
it all spirals back to Nesta.
So it's really, there's a really cool through line there. So that's really neat that worked out. And so she's been like one of my biggest cheerleaders, and she's usually the one supplying me with like my inner working knowledge. She's been hounding me to go after Throne of Glass, and I'm like, listen, the graphic audio hasn't come out yet, and that's
right?
Wait.
We're like trudging through it without graphic audio. It's so hard now because I'm so used to it.
I know.
So that's kind of how your happened. And then I feel like I've been in a fever dream ever since then, because you were totally changed my life. Like I've been able to travel. I've gone to several I've left the continental United States for the first time with her. Like all these Comic Cons and anime cons have invited me to come out and meet all the fans. And the coolest thing too has also been the number of people who come up and they're like, hey, I'm here with my like partner and they're really into the anime thing, but Nesta? And then I'm like, yes, let's talk Avatar.
You're like, I can do both.
So that's been delightful.
Anime wig and Valkyrie uniform all at once.
Yeah. Oh, I met a phenomenal cosplayer who cosplayed both Nesta and Feyre, and I ran into her. I went to go get a book signed by I'm so bad. I'm like a dementia patient with names. I'm spacing on the author's name, but I went to go get my Murderbot book signed because I'm in the graphic audio of that too, and I really wanted to, and I love those, and I wanted to get my book signed. So I was at a convention where she was at. I went to go get my book signed, and on the way back, I ran into a Nesta cosplayer. And I don't normally tell people I'm in the production because sometimes they don't know what that is. And they're like, okay, that's weird. And I don't want to bring it up, but I was like, you look so great. She had the full ball gown and the 3D printed version of the mask that was gorgeous.
Yes.
I have that, by the way.
Yes. It looked just like that. It was so beautiful. And I was like, can I get your picture? So I got her picture. And then 30 minutes later, she wanders down. She's like, that was you. And
That's a compliment to me.
She was so sweet. We had like a 20-minute conversation. She was so great. And then I saw her like a month later at a different con, and she gave me a mini 3D printed version of the mask. And I was like,
oh,
oh my gosh.
Love that. But also like I'm sure you made her day as like a cosplayer, because if the Nesta Archeron took my picture, I'd be like, I'm happy. I could die happy now.
Right?
That's peak right there.
Like you should have seen our reaction just to like you guys emailing us back. Like we're totally happy. We're good.
Okay, I gotta ask one more question about Spy Family, and I promise I'll talk all things Nesta.
You're good.
I could do it for hours, but so season 3 is going to be coming out soon. Well,
no, they announced it's coming out for fall season, so it'll probably be like September or so.
Oh my gosh, I'm so thrilled. Okay, so I was watching. I can't remember, but it was the movie that was out on Crunchyroll. And I started to get a little concerned about Yor and Lloyd. And I don't know if you can hint to it. Do you think they're going to be end game? I know that's kind of the premise, but any spoilers there?
I mean, I know as much as you guys do because I literally have my Shonen Jump subscription, so I can follow the chapters as they are written and as they're getting released. Some good stuff.
So good.
Really good. So I'm in the trenches on that one too.
Okay.
My personal theory is I think so. Do you want my crack theory, like of what
I
I think is
want.
going to happen? This is not official. I have no sources. This is just my gut instinct as an actor and as a writer. Is what I think is going to happen is we're gonna End of Sun is like slow burn of slow burns, so we're gonna be here a while. But what I think, what I think the end result will be is that at some point someone who is in the government, and there's been some hints that ooh, there might be multiple telepaths in play now, and that there are at least enough people who know this could be a thing. And right now, anyone who doesn't know about that, like Anya's tried to tell a couple people she's telepathic, and they just laugh it off because they're like, Anya's such a weirdo. Of course she would say that because she makes up everything, which is great and it works out perfectly. But I think someone is finally going to catch on. And I think she's going to be like the most hotly contested asset in Westalis, and to where every single organization are going to need to get her because she's like a huge boon if they can get her and bring her in. So I think that includes Wise, who Lloyd Twilight works for. I also think Garden, who Yor works for as for her assassination work. I think they're going to be called in, and I think it's going to be everyone is going to be trying to get Anya for their particular group. And I think that's when Lloyd and Yor are finally going to confront each other and realize, oh my God, that's your secret identity this whole time. And they're going to have an amazing knockout, drag out fight. They're going to be on the verge of killing each other and then realize, no, we've had these feelings. This is really, we are a real family. We've been building up to this. We've been strengthening our relationships. This is really something more. And hopefully there's like a gorgeous kiss, like in the rain and the covered in blood.
Oh,
and
I would die.
I feel like if like they've kind of proven that they're so dedicated to their mission, but I think Anya is the one thing that by that point, especially the way it has been developing and progressing, Anya is the one thing that would make them break mission. And then that is the one thing where they would say, no, we're not participating in this war. We're not participating in this anymore. We have to protect our family because that is more important. And that's going to end. And that's how, and then it's going to be like them against everyone. And it's,
oh my God.
So that's my headcanon.
I love it. I'm like so thrilled now. You want to know what? I'm going to think about that every time. It needs to
I
go
have no idea if that's going to happen, but in my heart, that's where I think it's going.
I love it. I cannot wait to see if that's exactly where they take it. So thank you for answering my questions about it.
Absolutely.
You were talking about the cosplayer that you met, and then when you were saying how forget you said someone that played the other character in Spy Family that you met as well. But you said that you guys were texting about like all the lore and how like you were talking about Nesta and ahhhhhhhhh, how she liked that and everything. I literally did like this fun like reel on my Instagram the other day where I was like, this is my official petition to be Sarah J. Maas's lore specialist, because I literally feel like I know every detail at this point. Like,
are you like the level of the tabs girl on TikTok? Like,
like we were talking at the end of last year, and Olivia's like, I think we've literally talked about every single little detail of that guitar, and I was like, every time you think I have no more theories, I will come up with 5 more theories.
I am so blown away. Like, I literally just became aware of the, like, is Cassian actually Nesta's mate like a month or so ago? And I was like spiraling on voice notes to Megan about it. I was like, wait.
Oh my God. I take some of the blame for that.
So, okay, Natalie, we're going to preface this by I truly in my heart believe that started right here. You're looking at her right here.
Oh my goodness, you guys are ground zero.
Okay. I posted a reel with all of these screenshots from Akasif, Akawar, and all of this stuff, and how I think that basically their mate bond is just like a made spell that Nesta made by accident. And so I wasn't expecting it to blow up. And it totally blew up. And then I was seeing people on TikTok going, this crazy person who doesn't think they're endgame, fuck her. And I was like, shit. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to double down more.
I mean, I was devastated. I went through the 5 stages of grief, but I ultimately came out going, I think I'm not, I could be wrong, but knowing how these things have gone so far, I think there's a very compelling case. And you
literally just made me so happy.
Okay. You know what? Let's start with the questions and let's lead to that because
Okay, we'll get into it.
We'll get into it. We'll get into it.
I will say, and the two girls could give their stance too, is like, I am a hardcore Messian shipper. So when this came out, I went through the stages of grief. I mean, I was in tears, just spiraling. Yeah, I cried like on camera with them. So like, let's go through this, and then we want to hear everything you have to say.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know if you saw any of the things I sent you, but I did.
I'm glad you sent me the questions because I was like, okay, I need refreshers on a couple of these characters, and I'm like, I remember this vaguely, but I have to go through it and like refresh in my mind what these plot points were and something. So I will do my best. Again, my Crescent City knowledge is a little, but we're getting there.
We'll help you out. We'll help you out with whatever you want to know. Choose to know.
I'm really bad where I'm like, I don't mind getting spoilers. Like I don't have like an issue with it. I'm not like actively like, don't tell me anything. I will spoil myself.
Well, like Henry said that you guys don't see, or obviously you don't voice act, but that you don't see any of the bonus chapters.
No, I actually have not gotten to read those yet. I don't know what happened in those. That was the one where I was like, oh shoot, I didn't have the time to go track those down on Reddit, which I've
that's what I should have said. I should have sent you my blog. I put all of the bonus chapters on there.
Oh, I'll have to go look at them. So I will go read them, but I have not gotten to them. I know
we'll get into that, but
I think I read like this is what it covers, but I don't know the details.
Oh no.
It's in depth.
All right, Olivia, you could start.
Okay, do we want to start at the very top with how? Okay. So Natalie,
we'll lead into the heavy shit.
Okay. let's leave the heartbreak for the end for everybody.
We're doing the drop
for last.
Exactly, it's a drop. Okay, so we'll start with Natalie. How did you get into voice acting?
I was bored. Honestly, was really what it was.
Yeah.
I'll try to go through the like very, very abbreviated hyper version. I was really a nerdy kid, but I was really into classical music. I wanted to be a classical musician. I wanted to be a piano pedagogy teacher, so like focusing on students with like at least 5 to like 8 years of experience or more. I wanted to teach at an advanced level. I was really into that. Like my whole personality was the classical musician. I was a total dork. I was really annoying in high school. I was that kid. And then
Nesta.
yeah,
the music.
Honestly, like a little more of a Violet Thorngale kind. Like that was very me. And I used to also write, and I got a little into the fan fiction community for a while, and that was kind of like my bridge for like getting online. I didn't read anything good, I promise. It's so much better now. You guys have like
I write so much
than I had. 2005 was rough, you guys.
Oh my god, yes, it was. I remember. Ooh.
It was bad. We were in the trenches. We had a couple good ones, but we were in the trenches. But around like my sophomore into my junior year of high school, I started having terrible pain in my arms playing. And all my teachers were like, this isn't normal. Your technique is fine. There's no reason you should be experiencing this. I could not get a diagnosis for the longest time. I did eventually much longer down the road, but at the time doctors could not figure out what's going on with me. Turns out I have fibromyalgia, which is a really awful autoimmune condition, and you have globalized pain issues with everything. But it was at the point where it's like, I can't play for more than like 30 minutes maximum a day. And that's, in anyone who studied classical music knows, you're supposed to be practicing like 6 to 8 hours a day. Like it's just a non-negotiable. So I was like, oh my God, my whole world. I had my existential crisis at 17, thinking like, okay, everything I thought I was going to do, I can't. And then my dad goes, hey, guess what? My job relocated. We're moving to the middle of nowhere, South Carolina. And I'm from the Midwest. I was outside of Milwaukee. I was used to living very, very suburban, and we moved to the country. And I was like, this is not my speed. It's a total culture shock too. If you've grown up with Midwest culture and then moved to Southern culture, just, it's really, really hard to figure out kind of the nuances of the culture, just the way you interact with people. And I just was very isolated. I didn't feel like I knew how to connect with people. I also was a weird high schooler to begin with. I did not I was not great at socializing to
Weird
begin with.
kids. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
We're all weird kids.
so I just totally gravitated to online because that's where I could find people where I'm like, okay, I can
Yeah.
relate to do stuff. And a big part of it was I was a creative, I was an artist, and I felt everything way too deeply, like not like in a bad way, but just really, really deeply and really intensely. And I was a very open, emotional person in a way that I realized, oh, this is not something that people are used to. And I didn't know how to like kind of bridge that gap. And I've learned a lot more about that now. But at the time, I was just like, I don't understand. No one likes me. I don't feel like I belong here. So I just totally retreated online. I was writing. I wrote 2 manuscripts that are still in a drawer somewhere. Hopefully, something will happen with those eventually. And so I did. I wrote a bunch, and then I was still missing music. I was still missing performing and something collaborative because writing is, you're in your little corner.
Very isolating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which isn't a problem, but that can be everything.
Yeah.
And
I'm a writer. I get it. I'm very introvert. Like, other than on the podcast, I'm very introverted. I write fanfics. I just started writing my book a few years ago, and it's like,
amazing. That's great.
yeah.
That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Phenomenal. But I was missing that component. So my sister at the time was getting really into like indie web animation. And at the time, this was like new grounds. Like YouTube had just become a thing.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, some of these indie animations are really cool, and there's some stylistic stuff coming out. And I was like, oh, it would be neat to maybe write music. I hadn't done a lot of that, but I was like, I would love to write music. Let me see if I can find some opportunities to like figure out how to network with these creators and do that. And so I went on the forums because that's where you went.
Yes.
And, I was looking for like through the like they had like a jobs, classified section, and I was looking for anything that said composer or music, and I clicked on one, and they said, "Oh, by the way, I also need voice actors for this." And one of them was like, nerdy college age teenage girl, and I was like, "Oh, I kind of know what that's about." And at the time, there was no standard for entry. We were all recording on potatoes at that point. So I'm sitting there thinking, I literally, one of my dear friends who is now, he's done a ton of work. He's the voice of Master Hand in Super Smash Bros. And he's the main character in the Persona 5. My good friend Xander, I remember back then we used to be so frustrated with him because I met him back in that context, and he literally had a garage not garage band, it was like a rock band. He had a rock band mic that he was literally, and you could hear him handling the mic sometimes. You'd be like, I need another take, when we do stuff. So that's a little bit. But at the time, I was like, I have a microphone built into my laptop. How hard could this be, right? I could be a voice actor. What? And I wasn't thinking about it. I was just like, we all do weird stuff on the internet and we throw it out for free and we just do it. Like, this isn't a career. This is just a fun thing.
It's never going to go away.
No. So I just tried it and I thought, oh, this is really fun. I want to are there more voice acting things I could do? And the really big game changer was pretty early on. I came across, there was a group called Pendant Audio. And back in the day, they were making audio drama online. And it was, and again, it was literally just the quality was all over the place because we were all just using whatever we had. The amount of pirated sound effects CDs that were circulating
LimeWire.
we were just it was just everything against the wall. It was just the complete Wild West, but it was such a fun place to create, and it was such a fun place to just be like, no one cares how good your audio, no one cares what you sound like, no one cares. I was literally recording again on my laptop mic. I had no treatment in my room or anything, and I got the bug for it doing that, and I wanted to do more of it, and I actually ended up building a lot of my community because I took one of my manuscripts and I tried to make an audio drama out of it, and it's fun. But I met a huge bunch in my community who I stayed in contact with, and we've been really, really good friends. These are my dear, dear friends. And now most of them are industry giants right now. I met Justin Briner, who's in My Hero Academia as Deku. I met him and he was in high school, and he was telling me about how good this new Game of Thrones series I should get into before the show came out. And my friend Amber, she runs a studio now that I work for regularly as a scriptwriter. It's amazing how we, and that was kind of when I learned the value of networking too, is you network with the people who are coming up with you. You don't go try to make friends with the popular person. You all raise your boats together on the same tide. And but yeah, and it was just that where we just kept being back in the day we were oh, wouldn't it be cool if we could audition for a video game, not even get cast or do that, but audition. We want something. Yeah. And now like this is our job, and we're, we do union gigs now, and we're like, I fly to LA somewhat regularly now to work, and it's just a very, I look back on it and I'm just like, how did, and this is the craziest part too. I met my agent doing audio drama too. So this is why I keep coming back to audio drama, because this is my golden meal ticket is I was on Tumblr in 2013, 2012, 2013, and I applied for an audio drama opportunity. And my agent now, he moved out to LA, got a job as a junior agent, and then reached back out to me and said, hey, I loved working with you on this audio drama project.
So cool.
Do you have representation yet? And I have representation in LA with a great agency, and I
Old
love
school Tumblr, man.
so it's little
I
things
still
like
use
that.
Tumblr. Well, yeah, we all do, but yeah.
Well, we're trying to get Olivia to use Tumblr
Yeah.
again.
I haven't quite made it back yet, but I genuinely, that's kind of my little spiel. I feel very, very passionate about audio drama. So that was kind of how I got in with graphic audio, was I knew that they were doing audio drama. And for the longest time, they were only doing in person in like Baltimore area. So I was just like, oh, I'm never going to be able to work with them, but I would love to someday. So they actually opened remote auditions during the pandemic, which was how I was like, and I got in, and I was such a nerd during my audition too, where I was like, hey, I've actually listened to a couple of your things. I've been into audio drama for so long. I really wanted to work with you, but I just couldn't justify a whole move to Baltimore for just this one income stream. So I'm so excited this worked out. And they were all like, you knew about us? You knew like we did this? Like what? It was really cute.
To be fair, you have like a really amazing like audio voice, like
thank you.
reporter, journalist, like audio, like your voice is just very like that. It's perfect for you.
Thank you.
I feel like this is a sign for me to get back into voice acting, because around that time I was also getting into voice acting just for fun.
Oh my God.
I don't know if you've heard of the webcomic, The Black Blood Alliance
No, I don't think so.
by Kay Fedwa. So they had a project of like a fan-based animation thing that they were trying to put together, and I don't know if they ever got it, but I did do some voice acting.
What?
It's on YouTube somewhere, but like it was fun, and then I got made fun of, and then I
Like,
just
No. Well,
I feel like now, like I feel like I'm getting a sign like, you need to go back to it, you silly goose.
there's
Like,
a lot more stuff available. It is so much different now. And the big thing too is that I keep telling people that if you want to try it again, I think kind of what I did in terms of like, don't go into it thinking it's going to be a career. Just go into it to see what you can do and have fun with it.
yeah, just fun.
If you keep up with it and you are challenging yourself and you are just naturally going, how can I continue to improve? How can I continue to shape my performances, and analyzing what you're doing and trying to work on it? Over time, you will just naturally get better and better at it and more comfortable with it. And you will figure things out slowly over time. My career took me, I'm in year 15 right now. And as long as you're not going in it, like I have to book enough work to like pay my rent in 3 months, have all this equipment, or no one's ever going to like me or cast me. Like, don't go in with that. But if you're just going in to have fun and you want to make stuff and you want to find other people to make stuff with, it's so rewarding. It's so great. As long as you don't have that, like, you just can't bring the hustle mentality to it, like right out of the gate. Like once you get going and you start building clients and you start knowing where you're going, like I'm all for that. But for just trying it out, just have fun. And it sounds like you did that already. So just keep doing that.
Track it down on YouTube and send it to us.
I will.
I want to hear it. Oh my gosh. All right. Do you have any routines, superstitions, or rituals before you get into the booth?
I have a couple. I I had to really overhaul it this year. I have mine is really thanks to Brandon McInnes. I think if you had any touch point for him, I mean, he's in a lot of anime. He's very, very prolific actor, but he also plays Apollo in Epic the Musical. So if you heard God Games, I think he's in that song for sure. Really, really talented musician. So he really, because I used to just like sing karaoke, like to just have something to like get my voice moving. But he just walked me through a really good routine. I do tongue stretches where you just do like different things where you just stick out your tongue and go like as far up and down and then side to side. You do 10 reps of that. You do like a taco tongue and then bend your tongue forward like that 10 times. One thing, you will never realize how weak your tongue is until you try to literally lick your tongue all the way around the between your lips and the front of your teeth, like
Oh my
that.
God.
try to do that 10 times in a row, and you're just like, oh my goodness, my tongue is
Ow.
so, like, it gets so sore and so stiff. But your tongue is your articulator, and it's so important for your clarity and your ability to speak cleanly. So I always do that before all my sessions. I do like humming on like to get your projection coming. So you kind of like hum like up through your head just to like line up your where your chest and your diaphragm and I'm describing this terribly, but I just kind of hum my way through a lot of different vowels. That Brandon had this whole routine that he walked me through that's really good, and it's a way to like kind of get your voice warmed up without like having to do anything stressful, because singing is actually pretty stressful, so it's not the most ideal warm up. But you do want to get like your throat warmed up and everything, so you just kind of like that. You kind of like hum through them in different ways and different configurations. Breathing exercises, another really good one too, is if you want to like totally relax your throat, you usually have a water bottle with a straw and literally just going will naturally relax your throat. So
Interesting.
and that's what I even have I'm in my booth, so I have all this stuff right here. I even have this straw here. You can do it without it. It helps if you have a little bit of water in a cup, because it's extra pressure that kind of helps. You don't want to have too much, but you can start to build up your strength that way. But if I'm doing like really vocally stressful stuff, like video game stuff, like you're yelling, to get your throat to not stay clenched, you just go just like that. And it just kind of helps release some of the tension out of your throat. And that's really, really important for being able to survive military sessions, especially. So those are kind of my big one.
Real quick, okay, when I know we're not supposed to really delve into this yet, but I will say when Nesta screams for Cassian and Aqua, oh my God, full body chills.
Yeah.
For the throat.
Full body chills. I was like, oh my God. First of all, how does she do that? And secondly, that was so emotional.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Holy crap.
That tends to be a thing I don't know if I grew up listening to audio drama and audio books. And so I think a lot of my acting intuition kind of comes from like what I grew up with and what I know like got me. And I was like, if I can match that intensity and this is what I know, like the sound. And I think there's a little bit of even musicianship to it as well, too, where I'm like, this is the musicality to it, and this is the how you build up the intensity. And the
emotion and like how it, oh my God, how it would sound across a battlefield. And
but also it does help of just years of doing this, and you just know that it's nice. I'm in this, it's not quite soundproof, but I'm in a space that dampens audio enough that there's not a lot of audio that gets in, there's not a lot that leaves it, and so I just turn the microphone down and I know that I can go to 11 if I need to, and I'm not disturbing, if there's anyone in the house, I can just kind of do whatever. And
the neighbors.
Yeah, so that helps if you have like the space to do it and a lot of years of being like, yeah, I can let that wall down. I can allow myself to feel and to project that level of intensity, and I'm allowed to do that. So that is kind of like a lot of acting over the years, it just kind of helps you get to the place where you can access that a lot more quickly, a lot more easily. So I think that all kind of helps. And at the time, I didn't know a whole lot about it. It's amazing how much we get the scripts and we read our part and we know like our little corner of things. But it is interesting when I listen to stuff back, I was like, I remember I recorded this and I did not know what was happening. I just knew that if she was screaming that way, it had to be a big deal.
Yeah.
And it had to be big. So I remember when Megan, who plays Anya in My Family, she was sending me the TikToks and that audio started like getting really, really popular. And I was like, wait, that came out? Like, do people like that? And then I was listening to it in context and I went, oh, damn, that worked out really good.
That's like, it's so wild to me how you guys can like film and like have no idea what's happening, because like when we're listening to it, we're like, oh my God, they must be so into it and like they must know the whole plot and all this. And then when you guys come on and they're like, oh yeah, we only really know what our character does. And I was like, that's crazy to me.
It really helps when you have a director that has a really strong vision. So they're telling you, so you're trusting them. You're totally, when you are recording that way, and this, a lot of voiceovers this way is like anime, you at least have the finished animation to look at and you can kind of see what your voice looks like in context right away. But with video games and with audio drama, you are totally the director is in control of that vision. And if they have a strong vision, it does come together, and they'll be like, okay, I need this take. Like, you'll go in and you'll give what your initial intuition of the read should be. And then they'll be like, oh, okay, I want to have a little bit of more of this. Like, can you give me something like that? And you'll do a couple more takes, and then you'll move on. And then you'll hear it in context later, and you'll go, oh, now I see why they wanted that read, because they were referring to this and they wanted to have this dynamic. Or, oh, they had recorded this other actor, and I can see now why our performance played off of them so well if we did it that way.
So things are specific, Olivia. So the way things come off are actually specific, Olivia.
Well, we will see what she says, won't we?
I'm not getting into this.
It's a highly contested for like a year. We have been fighting about this. So
August of 23.
More than a year. Let's be real. It's been multiple years. And it never gets better.
Never gets better. Oh my God.
I love it. Eka, you want to ask the next one? That's amazing though. It's so cool to hear that.
Really quick though, I wonder how different, like, do they purposely like hire people who have not read any of the books, or does it just happen that most people haven't and then they'll hire them? Or because I wonder how different it would be for people who have like already read everything and then get hired.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of depends. Like, I think they are going for whoever's on the talent pool, I'm assuming, is what they're going to, and then they're just figuring, like, they're just going, who has the right voice type. And I was not the first person to read for Nesta, and that was the only audition I got. A lot of times we don't have auditions for things. I've only ever read for Nesta, and then I read for the twins in Zodiac Academy. Those are the only times I've ever read for a specific character. Otherwise, you just get an email one day that says, you're in this production, this is the character you're playing, this is how many lines you have. So you never know. Like, it totally depends on what the director needs. With Nesta in particular, apparently Sarah was consulted for the main characters, and she had a really specific vision with what she wanted for Nesta. So I know Colleen was going back and forth a couple of times, and when she came to me, she was like, I've been through a couple rounds of this. We're trying to hash out what Sarah wants. We want to make sure we're getting this. Here's the feedback we've gotten so far. We want this type of voice. And I didn't know anything about the series at the time. So I was just like, okay. And I love I knew it was a fairy tale retelling, or at least it was very strongly fairy tale based. And I was like, oh, I love those books. Those are, I know the kind of tone and the energy of that. Whereas, like, okay, I can make an educated guess of what I think she's asking for based on all this context. And I read a scene. It was the scene where the queens are all at the house and like, no, you don't care about us. No, this is, and telling them off. And I did that scene. And I remember I finished the first read, and Colleen just goes, if she doesn't pick you, I don't know what else she wants.
Yeah, you are Nesta.
I was like, oh, well, that's good. I think I got it. Or I think I at least got what I understood the direction she wanted. I was really excited that I was like, oh, good. I met the direction. I interpreted correctly. And then I got the email, however many weeks later, and they're like, yep, you got the part. And I was like, oh, cool. Very neat.
I love how Sarah was like, oh, well, when I first wrote, like Nesta and Elaine, they were kind of like, the evil stepsisters or the cutouts that I really wasn't planning on expanding on. And then she was like, then I got like halfway through the book and I was like, I want them to have their own books in the future, and I don't want them to be cutouts. And then she had like this whole part where she was saying how like emotional Nesta in particular made her, and how she wanted her to have like a really big arc. And she, after ACOTAR, she was like, yeah, like she's definitely going to be a bigger player than just a cutout. And I'm so happy, because like the minute that Nesta was like, oh, I went to the wall to try to save you from Prithian, I was like, that's my girl. Right there, that's my girl.
And I love the narrative. Like, Farah's story in the beginning is obviously very compelling, but I love just the very slow way we build into Nesta, and we get to know a little bit more and a little bit more. And I have a feeling like I've now knowing that the way I've been following Elaine, especially, and every time Elaine's in a scene and every little reference, I'm like, we're gonna flash back to this. We're gonna need to know this stuff. We're gonna need, like, she's saying all these cryptic little things, or these little
she's a seer now.
And I'm just like, no, I was like, oh, because there's so many people sometimes where they're like, I can't stand Elaine. Elaine drives me nuts. And I'm like,
I love Elaine.
And I'm like, Elaine, I think is gonna her book is gonna be explosive when we get there.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think,
our princess,
if your own opinion, would you think that we're getting Elaine's book first or Azriel's book first?
thought someone said that she just confirmed that book 6 was going to be Elaine's. No, okay.
She said a lot of stuff. Like, she said that when she was pregnant, she had ideas for Elaine's book, but then she did another interview where she was like, oh my God, I can't wait to write Asriel's story. So then everyone's like, whose book is it?
Oh.
And nobody can decide which one is next.
I will
throwing us
say,
off.
I will say, my probably most ACOTAR cancelable opinion right now is that I don't like Asriel that much. I don't hate him, but I am not interested in Asriel even a little bit. Which I feel bad. And I'm like, I really hope there is something coming. Now, I do really like him and Gwyn, yes. Him and Gwyn are definitely who I think will come. And I think he has the potential to be more interesting within that context. I think they are a really good pair to fit together. And I think he'd be compelling within that context. But so far in the series, the level to which I do not care about Asriel, especially Asriel and Elaine, other than like just being friends, really cute friends. But I'm like, I just don't care about Asriel yet.
I cannot stand Elriel, so yeah, me. But I will say I do love Elriel as a character, but also I feel like the inner circle's opinions also sway literally everybody about every single character. And so the reason that I love Nesta and Asriel's friendship so much is because they are kind of the two outcasts of the inner circle. Like, yeah, Asriel's like a bat boy or whatever. But to me, it's like very obvious that they are more comfortable around Cassian than they are around Asriel. Like, they don't know anything about him. I'm like, you call yourself his brother.
Yeah.
You don't know anything about him. You don't really want to know anything about him. Like,
we know like his backstory. And what I think is happening, and because this is definitely not shade to Sarah, because I see all of this as very intentional, is that I think that because she tells the stories from her point of view characters, and she's really good at unreliable narrator.
Yes.
So I think that is not a reflection of Asriel as a character, but right now Asriel is not significant to Feyre, and I think we got more of him because Nesta and him are on good terms, and she's able to start communicating some of that, but she doesn't know him well enough, and he's not relevant enough to her for us to get that. So I think that's why we don't have a whole lot to hold on to about him, and I think that's very intentional. So no shade to Sarah, but I haven't gotten my hook with Asriel yet. Is more what I'm saying.
I 100% think it's intentional. As these girls know, I 100% believe that it leads back to some of the Crescent City bloodlines and the whole, like, who's daddy, and are there test tube babies floating around, and all this other stuff. And I'm like, well, Asriel's powers have not been explained once in like 8 books now. So this is very intentional.
And the fact that he has that dagger, I mean, that's
like,
not.
I know. I'm like, that's a very Starborn thing, Asriel. And then when he was like, oh, Rhys doesn't know this, I'm like, but you do? Excuse me.
And afraid of Asriel.
What now?
Rhys is afraid of Asriel.
Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing too. It was really was very, very funny was when I was reading, I think when I was in like the thick of War and Ruin, I was complaining to Megan again, who's my soundboard on this, where it was like, I was like, am I supposed to like Rhys? Because I don't like Rhys. He drives me nuts. And she just looks at me and goes, you're so well cast as Nesta. Because that is exactly her relationship.
You're too.
Ask this question, please, Mel. Please.
Ask.
Okay. You're sitting down. Okay, so there is this crack ship that absolutely adore because of that mutual hatred. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of my headcanon now because I'm so obsessed with it. Rhys-ta.
No.
Nesta and Rhys-ta. Like they hate each other. They're actually real true mates because they have way too much in common.
No, I will say, like, Rhys is so, I mean, he's so like to Feyre. He and Feyre are like, I cannot imagine them. And they are their best versions of themselves with each other too. So that is why I can't see that going anywhere. And and again, I don't think Rhys is like a bad dude. He is so 100% a wife guy. And he is just catastrophically willing to brush off
That's
issues.
bad judgment for a High Lord. Like,
Yeah, I think his intentions come from a good place. I don't think he's evil. I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think he's even like the worst. But as a ruler, he is just so hyper focused on himself and his specific core issues that
specific one city.
one city, and he's good when but he's definitely kind of got like that ADHD. Like if I'm not hyper focused on this, I'm really bad at tending to very obvious fires around me as a result. And that was especially with Silver Flame and the way he handled Nesta. I was like, you would never. You were so good with, like Feyre needs whatever time and anything she needs, and meanwhile her crazy sister over
You
here.
go in a sky house, bitch.
Yeah.
Like what?
I'm like, how
at
could
him.
you be so attentive to your wife? Like the way that she was like, you could tell she was dealing with this depression. She was dealing with this emotional meltdown. And then you just
Nobody else.
No one else could possibly.
Nobody else.
Yeah. So that's my beef.
I feel like I was just more mad at Feyre at that point. Like I do know that Feyre kind of tried to stick up for Nesta, but that's where I feel like Faizan kind of fails in like the whole perfect couple trope, because it's like I feel like every time Feyre tries to communicate to Rhys, he just still doesn't listen anymore. But I don't know if that's like because of how he died in ACOWAR and now he's getting more unhinged as we see. So I don't know if that's like a side effect of whatever's happening there.
I think
But
it's more like hubris, where he's so far everything has worked out in the end, where I think he's starting to feel untouchable. I feel like it will just work out. So or at least as long as I, focus again on the things that I want. And I would like to see there be consequences again for the fact that like he didn't tell Feyre about the pregnancy. Like like that, and that's the other thing too, where a lot of this stuff is done intentionally enough where I don't totally think it's happening in a vacuum and where there won't be repercussions. But I don't know. I could be wrong, but I would like to see that.
I need him to just face repercussions for anything. Like anything at this point. Like please do not make him untouchable, because I do reels about this all the time. But yeah, I basically did a reel recently where I was like, Rhys he makes these impulsive plans, and at this point he just accepts that, oh, everything's going to work out for me because I'm a Daemati and I'm a High Lord and I have done this and I have done that, and well, it worked out with Amarantha and it worked out with Feyre and it worked out with this, and I'm like, but you're not untouchable.
He is a classic gifted and talented kid who needs the real world.
Narcissism. Let's call it what it is, honestly. But yeah, I go back and forth between blaming Rhys and blaming Feyre, because Feyre let it happen. She's still complicit, even though she was like, oh, don't talk to her that way, and then she was crying into her eggs or whatever. It's like, if you're the High Lady and he claims you're his equal, no, you're not treating my sister this way. This is what's happening. Let me have a private fucking conversation with her without you in the room, But
also, Feyre does have baggage with Nesta, and they didn't talk things out, too. So they needed to have a heart-to-heart, and they were not doing that. So I think Feyre's complicit more, and and Nesta is too, where she was not communicative, but also like she clearly, I think Feyre is empowered and enabled within the Fae world in a way she was not in the human world, that Nesta took a lot longer to realize that she could, because Nesta had a lot more where she was raised in the like, this is how a lady behaves, this is how a human lady has to be. And so it's oh, sorry, your mic cut off?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, like, it's culture shock.
Yes, absolutely. And I think Nesta had way more deconstruction, whereas by the time Feyre was of age, they had already kind of had their downfall and she had to be in survival mode. So Feyre spent a lot more time not performing gender norms, especially in cultural norms, where she was immediately thrust outside of that by the time she was hitting puberty. Whereas Nesta had a lot more to undo and to rework. And she had all that time with her mother, where her mother had those expectations. Feyre didn't have that relationship with her mom that she had to unpack.
Well, I love that you brought up the whole gender norms thing, because one of my biggest Nesta arguments is when the Feyre stands will come at me and be like, Nesta did nothing and she let her hunt and I hate her. I was like, okay, you're looking at it from Feyre's point of view, right?
And that's the
What is-
unreliable narrator.
Yeah, unreliable narrator. First of all, we already know that Feyre lied about Nesta's shoes, so what else was she lying about? But also, I feel like people don't take context like into it either, because if you look at it, I'm like, Feyre chose to basically have the man's job, goes out to hunt, goes out to provide. But you really think they were just sitting there doing nothing the whole time? Like, Nesta was like, who kept the hovel clean? Who did the laundry? Who cooked the meat that she brought home? You
Who
know,
was
we know she
trying
stopped the
to
wood.
land a husband and putting
Yeah.
up with nonsense to try to get a husband.
Yeah. So I was like, the mother raised her to do the woman's work. She was
Mhm.
doing the woman's work. Feyre's just not going to bring that up because she thinks her own part of keeping them alive was more important. But I always love to throw back, like, oh, they still would have died if they had to eat raw meat, and Nesta cooked it. So, because Feyre in book 2 openly tells Reese, oh, I can warm up your soup, but I can't cook. So I'm like, she wasn't cooking that meat she brought home, and we know that Papa A and Elaine weren't doing it. So
Yeah,
Nesta was doing it.
do you feel like Nesta was doing a lot more at the cabin than what Feyre lets on?
I think so. What exactly that entails, I even feel like Elaine probably was contributing to a certain point, though I think it'll be interesting because I don't think we have enough information to know what was going through Elaine's head and what Elaine, because she does have this where you have this very strong example of Nesta was her mom's little project. Feyre never really interacted with her mom. Where does Elaine sit in that?
The
Where was,
doll. She was like, I was a doll.
and there's a lot to unpack that when you were told you sit there and you be pretty and you be the nice thing on the shelf
You're
until
just
someone is
pretty.
ready to use you. Like
Yeah.
that has a lot of unpacking to happen
And we
too. And
talked about like Elaine, like Elaine's part of this was basically being the one who was kind of like the emotional nurturer and the one that took care of their father. So like in her own way, she did contribute by like, you know, kind of keeping the peace as much as she could between Thera and Nesta, taking care of the crippled dad, like sitting with him and talking with him and like making sure he didn't kill himself and all this stuff. And I feel like Elaine was just kind of keeping the hopes up, the spirits up in the cabin, and that was kind of an underrated part of it. Like, no, physically, she probably didn't keep them alive, but mentally, she kept them as sane as she could.
and she wanted to grow things too, and she wanted to, I mean, was she gardening? Did she have was there something tied into that she was trying to do?
Yeah.
And again, if she was not raised with the survival skills or that, like the strong personality, like Feyre, who's like, I'm going to bullheaded figure this out.
Yeah.
If you are kind of like, I don't know what to do. The only thing I know how to do is work in the garden.
Yeah.
You know, like, how does that impact things? Because some people are resourceful
beauty,
about problem solving, and some people are like, if I don't know what to do, I just go and I get locked into like all I know how to do is this. I got to keep doing this. Like there's a lot of interesting like psychological mental health stuff that could be there.
It's so
Well,
fun because
like
Elaine,
Elaine bought Farah her first paints when she turned 17. I mean, she's known as the painter. You can thank Elaine for that.
Seer. And Elaine is so much like their father. It's crazy. Like I'll say all the time, like even when they were human, there was moments of like her and Papa Archeron like having visions and their eyes going cloudy and like it was really suspicious and I can't wait to find out more about that because it was weird and just more about the parents in general. But also when you brought up the fact that Elaine likes to grow things and like make things pretty. So she like grow things like for beauty and for stuff, but then Papa A also like did woodworking. Like he carved things for beauty. So they're also very similar in that way too, which I found very interesting. And they look alike.
I think
Hmm?
Farah painted things for beauty.
Yeah. Yep.
Nesta was just gorgeous.
Nesta
Like-
was gorgeous anyway, but she was the pretty sister. Even though everyone's like, Elaine's the prettiest. I was like, I kind of think Nesta's the prettiest.
And I also wonder too, like Nesta probably had a whole host of like possibly music, embroidery, all kinds of stuff too that you can't do when you have no money too.
Yeah.
So
The story that Elaine tells about her with the music and the fact that Feyre didn't know at all about that. Like Feyre knows nothing about her sister. It's
yeah. So that's why I'm a very staunch Elaine defender because I'm like, Feyre knows nothing and Nesta had to play protector in a very like Elaine is the breakable porcelain doll that we can't let anything happen to. That's how she was raised to treat Elaine. We don't know anything about Elaine yet.
I saw
She does have that fire.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a Tumblr post yesterday, which random because you were talking and it, reminded me of it, where someone said that when Nesta put the carving on Papa Archeron's grave, that was kind of symbolism of her like letting Elaine go and being her own person because it was like the rose that he made for Elaine. And I was like, that's really interesting because I was like, Elaine did stand up to her when she was like, what am I supposed to do? Just be in my little garden forever and you're not supposed to let me do anything bigger. And I was like, I cannot wait for this girl to explode equally as much as Nesta, for her to see that like she's not breakable.
No, God, no. She's explosive.
She is the equal to her mate. Hello, that's why they're mates. I can't wait to see it. But
Well, and I'm curious to get your opinion on this, Natalie, because so in Silver Flames, obviously, Nesta has, I think, one of the best story arcs in the entire series, my personal opinion. And like, who can't relate to Nesta, right? Like, I read Nesta's character and I'm like, oh my God, this is me. This is like the self-loathing, the self-punishment. And I know that you're a staunch Elaine defender, but I found it interesting in Silver Flames. I feel like Nesta defended Elaine for many, many books for a very long time. And then when it came to Nesta's turn to she's suffering from the alcoholism and the kind of her behavior, Elaine kind of up and left Nesta, right? I feel like she kind of turned on her and took Feyre and Rhysand's side. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And kind of left Nesta to suffer on her own a little bit.
Well, I can very much see a couple different directions. Like, I could see Elaine seeing Nesta as like the one who, now that her parents are gone, the one who is continuing to enforce the narrative that you are breakable and that you can't handle yourself, and again, a lot of this hinges on all this stuff that could be in play for Elaine, especially with her being a seer and the stuff she's went through. And it's clear that Nesta's book unlocked so much that was going on that made all of her stuff makes so much more sense in context. So it's kind of hard to say. I think part of it is, though, that Nesta took the role of continuing to enforce this narrative about Elaine. And Elaine, that is clearly not what Elaine believes or what she quite buys into. And I think that it's probably in some way tied to that, where even though I think Elaine and Nesta have maybe a closer relationship, and I think Elaine is kind of at the end of her rope, though, where she does see Nesta being self-destructive and where she knows that this behavior isn't working and shouldn't continue to be the way it is. But also, like, she's like, you are still not hearing me. And you are going through this stuff. What you're going through might be valid, but you're not acknowledging that I'm going through something too.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear about it. You want to maintain the status quo where you try to control everything, and including me.
yeah.
And I don't want to be a part of that anymore. And I don't know what the right thing is, but I know you trying to control me and everything around you, and you self-destructing in the background while you try to control everything, isn't the way this should be.
I did like how Nesta kind of got mad and was like, Elaine's a dog and she'll go to whatever hand feeds her. And I was like, I actually gotta see that happening right here, because I thought it was, I like Elaine, but like I was annoyed at her on many parts in this book because it's like she goes to Nesta and Nesta like yells about, the father, and they have that whole conversation. And then the first thing Elaine does is go back to the river house and cry to Rhys. He doesn't want to listen. I'm like, first of all, Rhys should not be in the middle of your sibling shit. Why are you going and crying to Rhys? Because you already know that he hates her. And then when
he more aligns with the answer she wants.
No, but it's so
in that moment.
It's so frustrating.
When Elaine does have growing up to do, I think.
No.
I think she has, and I definitely am of the, I think Elaine is spring court school of thought too. So I do see, I think she's meant to be in spring. I'm completely okay with the Tamlin redemption arc, but I also could see their personalities, like him forcing her to mature, but also her forcing him to emotionally confront his ish too. So we'll see. But I think that to me mentally that tracks the most.
So are you a Tamlin supporter?
with the knowledge I have right now, I think so. I believe that's going to be. I really want to see that endgame personally.
I love it. So Tamlin more than Aleutian, right?
I think the mating bond is false. I think that he and Vasa are. I think we got way too much going on there.
Oh,
I'm ready for
no
my Swan
way.
Lake. I'm ready for Swan Lake.
My literal two worst ships are Elriel and Vassian. And Tamlin. Okay, but I'm not going to go into the whole theory again, but mine blew Henry because I was talking about earlier when I referenced Papa A and Elaine both kind of having visions and being weird. I proposed the theory that I have on my Instagram where I go into this whole thing where I think Papa A might have been like half fae like Miriam, and that Mama A maybe had a miscarriage or something, and she knew Tamlin because we knew that Tamlin knew the mother. And so I think that Elaine is actually just a shape-shifted child of one of his dead sentries from the curse that Mama Archeron replaced with her dead child. And I think she is a Spring Court fae, but she's shifted human. And I think that's why she's so Spring Court coded. And I think that's why she has so much in common with like Papa A as a
if we're going along those lines, why not have her be Tamlin's daughter? Why not have like with Rhys's sister or like? See, if we're following that line of thought, then I would follow it all the way up the stream.
Well, I think that Rune is Tamlin's son with Rhys's sister.
I don't know. I think they're him and his dad are a little too. I think that's there. I think that's really intentional because there is kind of that like there's too much there. But I mean, I wouldn't say it's not possible.
His mom is in a spring villa and has the lilac gown and like all the spring court. I was like, there's no way that's not Rhys's sister. Come on, there's no way.
I do think, I mean, there's obviously something that has not been, and I think she's laying those breadcrumbs. I think you're definitely on the right trajectory there. I just don't know if I see Rune being Tamlin's is all.
The only issue I have with him being Einar's is like, why did he hate him so much? One. Two, when
his mother didn't love, or wasn't, she was still.
Well, I mean, Einar, when he was like abusing him and stuff for the Starlight, which is weird because like he had Bryce and everything, but also when Rune is like, I have nothing of my father's, like he doesn't look like him, he doesn't have any firepower, like there's really nothing that screams, okay, I'm Einar's son to me. But when he took I don't know if you read this far into Crescent City 3, but when he took the antidote, he has this really potent healing power, which Einar also didn't have, which Tamlin actually has. Because when in ACOTAR, when Tamlin is with the blue fairy, and Feyre's like, can't you fix him? Like, can't you heal him or whatever? He's like, yeah, I would have been able to like restore him completely if like my magic wasn't being stifled by Amarantha. So I was like, he has Tamlin's healing power, and his mother could be Rhys's sister. Interesting. And everyone draws him with flower tattoos. I just want to throw that out there. Everyone draws him with rose tattoos, and I don't know why, but it gives me life because I was like,
interesting. The only thing there then would be, why would his dad be expecting him if he isn't, to be his heir, if he knows he isn't?
I don't think Einar knows, because if Rhys's sister is the child of their parents, she also would have been a Daemati.
But would his dad treat him that way if he knew he was his?
I don't know.
I'm spitballing. I'm throwing spaghetti here.
Well, that's the question. Did he know that he wasn't actually his, or did he have suspicions like Baron, because that would mirror Baron with Lucian, and that's why he was abusing?
I thought he had suspicions.
Baron did. It didn't.
Einar?
Yeah, Einar. I thought he had suspicions.
So I don't know how far Natalie is in the book and how, if she wants.
Good. You're good. Go for it.
Okay. Basically, Einar and Rune are fighting a lot, and we all know that he abuses him and everything like that. But Danica, she has a certain gift that can sniff out bloodlines. Have you read that yet?
She's a bloodhound.
Okay. So she's a bloodhound. She has certain gifts, and so she was coveted, I think, by Einar, and that there was like a little breadcrumb that was dropped there. And so I think a lot of the fandom is like, oh, was Einar wanting it because Rune might not be his? And then there's a Lauren bonus chapter, which I don't think you've read yet. So Yeah, in it, and I'm curious. I want to see what you have to say, or if you ever make a reel once you do read it. But it talks about Rune's mom, and she's always waiting for somebody in Crescent City. There's no pictures on the walls. She's very spring. I want to say she's kind of spring coded.
Mhm.
So, people, do you feel that Tamlin and Rhysand's sister, that she could be Rhysand's sister,
Mhm.
and that they kind of had a thing before, and that's why they were being hunted?
Yeah, I mean, without having read it in context to be able to make alternative theories, I think it's a really compelling one. I definitely think there's clearly something that was unresolved there.
Yeah.
The fact that Tamlin had Rhys's mom's and sister's wings, but not necessarily proof of death.
Yeah.
Also,
Shifter, come on.
I think there's something there. And again, Sarah usually tends to plant these things and then follow through with them later. So I can't imagine, and she definitely doesn't like to leave the loose ends. So I feel like Tamlin has received a lot of karmic comeuppance for his mistakes, but I don't think he's unredeemable yet too. He's clearly deserves the punishment he's gotten, but I don't think he can't come back from it.
There was also, I think this might have been the scene that you were referencing, Olivia, when Rune mentions that Danica was at the White Raven with them in that kind of flashback thing. And he's like, oh, Danica kind of stiffened and like looked between me and Bryce. And he's like, oh, I think that she just figured out that we're siblings. Because at that point, Bryce was like, oh, we're cousins, right? I think that she actually figured out that Rune wasn't Einar's because she'd been around Einar. That's only Rune's, POV of that scene. I don't think that's necessarily what Danica found out at that time. And then there's a lot of hints that Tamlin's actually Starborn. I don't know if you've gone that far either, but there's like the way that Bryce blasted back Rigelus in CC2, and then the way that Tamlin blasted back Amarantha and Akatar. I did whole reels about this with all the quotes, but there's a lot of hints that he's Starborn. So to me, Bryce and Hunt are kind of like, Lauren and Tamlin. Like, did he help her go through the rift? I feel like he could have been her battery. And maybe there was a bargain or some sort of stipulation where he physically can't tell Rhys, like until she comes back or something. And because of the parasite, she got stuck in the Crescent City world. Because as we know, the Asteri put the parasite in the water. Maybe that's why she can't, put her wings out too and all that. And why she kind of seems like she's always like in pain and I don't know, sick in the bonus chapter, seems like.
Okay.
What I was gonna say, once you read it, Natalie, you have to come back to us and tell us.
You have to like chat us up.
I need Natalie's deep dive. I want her opinion. It means the most to me. Like, I need to know everything.
I'm messaging you my blog. You need to read this bonus chapter and tell.
Yeah, I do want to read it. I really do.
We need to
get I was gonna say, well, I feel like it's time that we talk about Nesta and Cassian.
Yeah.
Do you guys all agree?
Let's try to go by our guide because we go so off
all over
the planet. Okay. Where is the first? Okay, where is the first? All right. Here's a big one that we want to ask you. What are your own thoughts on where Nesta's future arc could possibly go before we bombard you with our own theories?
Oh, gotcha. So I just to go down the list, I do think she and Cassian have genuine feelings for each other on some level. I think there is like they've had some form of bond, they've had some connection, they do seem to like each other. But I do think there is really compelling evidence that they're not mates. They just are really, really close to each other. And I am devastated because I love Cassian. Cassian is one of my favorite characters. I love him to pieces. So the thought of anything happening to him is why I was so distraught when I found out about them not being true mates. But it was like immediately I was like, this clicks, this feels right.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So I don't think they are the end game couple as much as that destroys me, and I am really, really concerned that he's going to survive the story, which will devastate me. I will not I will not be okay when if that happens.
No idea how validated I feel because people make me feel crazy, and I was like, no, all of the proof is there. I've compiled it for you. It's there.
I could be wrong, but I have a gut feeling. I don't feel like I have a strong sense of who Nesta Nesta's endgame is, though. I think I'm kind of interested in the idea of her and Eris a little bit. I do think there's some interesting like sparks kind of there where I would be really interested, but I do like the Dusk Court theory a lot too. Obviously, I do think Dusk is clearly she's really hyping that up. I think she
Wait.
makes I think she makes the most sense to take over Dusk because like Feyre just from like the get-go was so Night Court, like just really, really just slammed in that everything fit, everything was right about that. And I think Nesta makes the most sense for revamping Dusk and finding someone who can match her energy, I think is going to be kind of the next step of her arc. And as much as I love Cassian, he is not
What for her?
that. He's not
He's
that.
not that. Like, even the proof where he like couldn't be a courtier in Akasif, and he just failed at every turn. We're trying to do. I'm like, he can't be a courtier, and you expect him to be a king? No.
Such a golden retriever, and I love that about him. And I think he's so important. Like I've had a relationship like that where that was not the person I was supposed to be with, but it was so important that I was with that person at that stage in my life to help me understand more about myself and who I was supposed to be. And there's still plenty of good feelings about that relationship, even if it didn't work out, where I kind of feel like Cassian and Nesta are kind of that way, but the only thing is that Nesta and him are both so stubborn. I don't think that's breaking apart unless he's literally gone. And I think the clues there are terrifyingly indicating that's the case. So that's my great fear. But I do think her having the trove and her having access to so much power and her connection to the cauldron and that level of like primal, that primal connection, I think she is still, Silver Flame was just the start. I do not think she's remotely done yet.
Oh no, not by a long shot. No, I agree.
Yeah, the minute when Cassian, even in Aquawar, when Cassian was like, oh, if I protect those who need it, it'll be a death well spent. And then in Akasif, when, they're comparing him to an alias and all of this stuff, and Nesta's like, it's only a matter of time till it sticks. I was like, girl, that is foreshadowing. But yeah, I do think that Nesta's definitely going to be Queen of Dusk. Obviously, Feyre's High Lady of Night. But my personal theory is that Elaine's going to be, Air or High Lady of Day with Lucian, just because it kind of makes sense to me that they're all solar quartz. But also, I do think the Aleutian mate bond is real, just because he felt the bond before she went in the cauldron. But I
think he's lying. I think he's covering for Tamlin. I think he and Tamlin have some background, and he's like, this is not gonna go well. I have to step in and cover. And I think they've got some stuff.
Oh, I all the proof that they're like that instinct when he's in the library with her, when she's like, touch her, taste her, smell her, touch her. And I was like, yeah, that's a little too real. And then like he pulled on it. I don't feel like
I'm actually with you, Natalie. I love Lucian. I love Lucian so much. I agree. I think that Lucian, either Tamlin had shapeshifted into Lucian going into that cauldron, or like something had happened that they're.
Oh wait, isn't there also that theory that like it's a fake, like it was faked for what was it? What was who did it? It was oh God, I just read this and I thought it was really fascinating.
Someone said that Tamlin shapeshifted them into each other, but
no,
who spell cleaved in the scene?
No, there was something where it was what was it? Was it tied to Kostjay somehow or something like that, where he was manipulating Lucian ahead of time so that way it would go to him, so that way he could get Elaine and get her to be able to break his bond, where he can get out of the lake, that little lake area. It was something like that where Kostjay's manipulating it, so he created a fake mating bond to try to lure them in some capacity. That was what it was.
It's so weird to me though, because wouldn't he just use Vasa then? Because he already has Vasa. I feel like it would be easier to just use Vasa.
She's a human though.
Yeah, she is. But Rhys saw Feyre when she was human. Felt it during Callan May, according to him.
Oh, like the mating bond between the two. Yeah. Oh, the two of them.
Yeah.
But if your theory though that they all have like secret Fae heritage, Vasa might not have that.
I did have a theory that she was the fourth Archeron sister.
Oh, interesting. Okay. But I'm a little bit more on the amount that they're hinting at about Kostya and Vasa and Elaine, and just the way that Lucian has already so gravitated into that like kind of like that vein. I do not think
I
Lucian.
think you're all wrong. I think all of you are wrong.
We have to ask you about this because it's been gnawing at us. In CC3, there's no mention of the mating ceremony. Do you think it actually?
If she has not confirmed it absolutely happened, I don't believe it has yet. Or there is some reason, and I don't know why. And I don't know if Cassian is like mentally fighting against it, if it was, if it's kind of a made thing that he's fighting against subconsciously, or he's exploiting like Nesta not knowing the exact specifics of the tradition and like, oh, if you didn't actually do this and sit down and do it, it doesn't actually mean that. Like, I think there's something to that.
They're like, oh, it's 3 days later. It's 3 days after Akasif. And then it's like Cassian's pissed at her in the CC3 bonus chapter. Like, even before the whole Reese and the mask thing, he was pissed at her. They're very specifically, which I also did a whole board on this, they're very specifically not wearing mating bands. And every single couple that we see that are confirmed either mention their mating bands, show their mating bands. And I was like, they're not wearing mating bands.
They're so specific and intentional about these things that I think it is very obviously pointing to something. I don't know what. I don't know how exactly that's going to unfurl, but I think it's very intentional.
Oh my gosh.
It's devastating.
At least I have validation on this one thing for now. I will fight tooth and fucking nail for Illusion, but the fact that I'm validated with that Cassian's gonna die and they're not mates made my day.
Oh my god. You're not holding back punches.
My word.
No. Oh my god.
I for sure I came on here saying I was so confident. I was like,
I know you were. I was laughing my ass off. I was like, she's gonna think that she's got to side with her. There's no way.
I for sure did. I was like, I'm just waiting to see what Natalie says. I'm like, she's gonna make me feel so good. I'm gonna be so comfortable. This is a bunch of bullshit, and I want you. This is just crumbling everything.
We both got shocked because I was like, oh, I totally kind of think that she thinks Nessian is endgame, but I also thought that she was gonna side with me on Illusion, so we were wrong about both.
There you go. You went out both.
Outdated at something. Oh my god, there's so many questions. What's your favorite Nesta quote?
Oh, my favorite Nesta quote.
And can you do it for us in her voice?
I for some reason I really what was it? I really love Reese is an asshole. A preening, arrogant asshole.
That is my favorite too. Yeah.
I'm also I really love I am not with you, I am fucking you, which is great, and
also foreshadowing.
yeah. But yeah. I also really like her, and I have never hated you, Cassian. So,
I'm not training in that miserable village. Reese is an asshole, an arrogant, preening asshole. I fucking love that. So, oh my god. You want to do the next one, Olivia?
Oh, okay. So yeah, I do want to do the next one. I'm just a little
now that you're like trying
you know what? Pass it to Eka because I'm still over here in my feelings. So just give me a minute.
No, you're good. I saw the way your face was falling.
Eka, just give me a minute.
Why do you think Nesta was immune to Tamlin's glamours?
So my theory about this, and this is kind of the I've been reading a little too much mythology for so long, is in a lot of contexts, glamour is not true. Like it changes reality or it makes it so you cannot see a thing. Glamour really, really, really depends on your subconscious mind not being engaged, in your subconscious mind expecting to see something, and then the glamour happily supplies what your expectation is. I think Nesta has shown that she is hyper aware and hyper suspicious and has always had her guard up so much that glamour does not coming up from someone who has a lot of anxiety. If you are constantly second guessing and questioning things, I think it's a lot harder for your passive brain to just accept something. So my suspicion is that it was just the nature of a glamour really depends on your opponent or the person you're casting it on having those expectations that things will be normal. And it could also be that, Tamlin wasn't even trying to make it a particularly strong glamour, that if someone, and I love the idea that like he didn't make it strong enough so that way if someone really did care, they would know and they could find out. Which again, just another layer of emotionally devastating there. But I think that's kind of where I think where I think it might be is that glamours traditionally are not meant to be like true invisibility or true rewriting reality or truly rewriting your brain so much as just playing on expectation. And then if Tamlin, then there could be that added layer that Tamlin also did not make it particularly strong, just in case.
That's also why I was mad at Feyre when she was like, you really believe that your dad came, but not Nesta. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
That was hard.
But never underestimate the power of a really patriarchal society to pit women against women. So,
what is your favorite Nesta scene overall and your favorite two voice acts?
Oh, my favorite overall, I really loved just anytime Nesta was finally getting to like the bottom of her feelings with Cassian. Like I love when he gives her the music box or the music device, whatever it was. Was so lovely. And then I really enjoyed the writing on that scene. I really liked when she was kind of finally able to let it out when they're in the middle of the I forget what it's called, to Ramiel. They're going up to the peak and the trial, and he's out there with her, and they're at the river.
The blood right.
Yes.
The hike.
Mm-hmm. And she's finally, because that was even that one was
the hike.
That
was before the blood right, yeah.
Yeah, that's when she was that one after she tells Rhys about Feyre's pregnant or about the pregnancy?
Get her out of this city or I'm gonna fucking kill her.
Mm-hmm. And then so every time we get those moments where we are finally, Nesta is finally addressing here's how I feel, this is where I'm at, this is what's really going on, and she's having those moments with Cassian. That's why I love Cassian as a character so much, because he is that he's so perfect for her because he has that golden retriever energy and he has that I do care about you, even though I think there is that element of there being something made between them, that he still 100%, they had a connection from the get-go, and I think he genuinely does care about her, and that he is just this rock that she can kind of beat away at, but he has enough there that even while he's going through his own issue and kind of figuring himself out, that her issues cannot beat him down, though.
Speaking of who he,
I really want you to ask this because I can't handle it. Go ahead.
Speaking of him trying to figure out who he is and what he's about, what do you make about him and his whole "I'm fantasizing about more" thing after 500 years?
I don't know. I also 100% buy the more is the traitor theory too.
Yes!
So
I agree.
Part of me can't help but wonder if that is a factor, that she, and the way that she's kind of been weird with Azriel and kind of always made sure that he's kind of kept on some connection to her. And I don't know if she's done something similar with Cassian, where she's just left just a little bit enough that she always has that ability to capitalize on that if she needs to. I don't know, but I think there's something where Moore's pulling a lot of very, very subtle strings there, and I don't. There's something.
Yeah, it's. So I also kind of did a mythology dive, and the Morrigan or whatever is actually connected to those soldiers, and specifically that are destined to die. So I was like, is this why Cassian's more and more getting connected to more? Because it's just weird. I know you didn't read the bonus chapter, but there's an Akamath chapter, and the first scene that he's really in with Nesta as a human, he's like, I don't want to tell more that I care about her, and I don't want to tell more of this, and I don't want to tell more of that. And then even at the end of Akasif, when she's like, yeah, I want an ornate mating ceremony or whatever. And he's like, Moore will never let him live it down. And it's like, what are you thinking right now? Like, she's talking about your wedding, and your first thought is Moore? What?
And there's also a certain level too where you're like, okay, am I reading too much into this? Because they have been friends for 500 years, and they are like this very enmeshed little friend group too.
She was
Where
awful to Nesta, though. And it's like Cassian didn't say anything really about it. He was just like, well, we're trying to prevent her from becoming that. But like, how about don't tell me
But
that
also,
you want it done
but
to her?
with Reese being that way, why would he think that Moore being that way is any different? When he's
Yeah.
like, well, so that's kind of why I'm not totally sure if
I'm
that's
like, is this like a, I don't know, death tie sort of thing?
yeah. And Cassian again, bless him, especially when his friend group is concerned. I think he's a little too forgiving, a little too. He also has Reese's tendency to be like, it'll be fine. We've been friends for 500 years. We'll just brush this off. We just, we'll figure it out, kind of
Like
a
that.
thing. And I think that's going to be their downfall, which is so sad.
I'm like, I can actually potentially see the inner circle like not being the inner circle, like an actual breakup. Like I do see obviously Reese and Feyre still being High Lord, High Lady. I actually have a theory that Amren's going to be some sort of a betrayal because she was really weird in CC3, especially
Mm.
like, in regard to
Yeah,
Melanie
I think there's
and shit. Mm,
yeah, Amarin, I think she definitely had a
I mean,
lot
she's
of like
definitely scary. Come on.
yeah, I mean she definitely had a lot that was already covered in War and Ruin that I think we've gotten a good chunk of that, but she is kind of a weird wild card.
And then she's like, "Oh, I lied. Oh, I lied. Oh, I lied. Oh, I lied." And I was like, "Okay, so what else are you lying about? Like everything? You're lying
But the
about
other thing is too is she's the compared to the others, she behaves so much more like a true immortal, where how much of that is also like is some of her stuff I think could also be coming from her having that immortal line of thinking and her being like, hey, I've had friends, they're nice, but they only last so long. And
like I kind of see her as like I know that she wanted to like have feelings and know what it was like to have friends and all this stuff. But then when Reese said like, "Oh, Amren's known my family for millennia and all this stuff," and I was like, "That's weird. That's really weird." And then she's lying about when she got put in the prison. She's lying about how she got out of the prison. And I was like, as much as I really hate Reese, like, is Amren pulling a string here? Couple strings here?
that could also be tied to just her knowing more about Dusk and leading back to her possibly advising and contributing
Hmm.
to that process as well,
They will
where
remember they
she's
have
keeping
not
those
caught
cards.
me. I was like, who was the they, Amren? Was it Lanthus and Vesperus? Like, you knew she was there the whole time? Like, so suspicious. But yeah, I can definitely see like the inner circle like breaking up. Whether I don't really know if Amren will survive or not. I guess it could be like Feyre, Reese, Amren, and then Cassian dying. I could see more going off to do her own thing whenever, or if she's one of the betrayals, I guess. I do see obviously Nesta as Queen of Dusk, but I also see like Azriel as Nesta's right hand. I see him kind of defecting.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
That
when
would
you
be
brought up truth.
well, especially if, and also too, if he's attached to Gwen, Gwen's
Yeah,
gonna follow Nesta, and
the Court of the Valkyries. Yup.
yeah, so that I mean, I think there's some foundation for that.
And I
Um,
think that's also why Sarah may have been having the IC kind of still isolate Azriel because he wasn't going to actually stay in the inner
mm,
circle. But I also brought up a point where I'd like to get your opinion on this. If Azriel is Nesta's right hand and Nesta, there's a whole king theory that I have for later, but Nesta's Queen of Dusk, do you think that there's a possibility that if Gwen and Emery are, Valkyries and in the court, do you think Balthazar could be her political advisor and that's why he was brought into Akasif and she was like, he loves politics?
Remind me, Balthazar,
He was
what?
the guy in the Blood Right that
Oh, him,
attacked
yeah.
Emery in the cave.
I don't know, but he is way too
I
intentional that he is going to be a player. I don't know in what capacity, but I remember listening to that and going, this guy is going to be a major part of this series. I can tell. I don't
I
know how, but he
personally
is.
I personally am not on the Moore and Emery train. I personally think Balthazar is going to be Emery's mate or endgame. I
Mm,
think that he's going to be the political advisor in Dusk, and since the Valkyries are in Dusk, they're going to kind of figure out their thing there. Or they're going to be the new like Lord and Lady of Illyria because Cassian's the liaison currently, and if he dies, Rhys doesn't want to deal with him. Az doesn't want to deal with him.
One thing I would be interested in seeing, and Emery might be a good candidate for this too, is that the Valkyries traditionally weren't really attached to men at all either, too. So, and Emery has so much of her story is about her kind of deconstructing from her culture, at least the toxic parts of her culture, that I genuinely do wonder if she's just gonna her arc. And I even too with the how independent Nesta is too, if that even
Yeah.
in the cards for her. I don't
There's
know.
a definitely possibility of them just being like badass women on their own or whatever. I just my just initial thought was like with Phazand in particular, their whole thing about Human City is evil and Illyria is awful and all their prejudices and stuff. I'm like, I just really want to see like a healthy Illyrian couple.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that stems from. I was like, I adore Balthazar so much. I adore Emery so much. And like,
I think,
you know,
based on the little bit we've gotten of them so far, I do think they're really interesting characters. I do think he's going to be a factor in there with them. So I wouldn't be mad if they became a couple, but there is a little part of me that's kind of also would like to see Emery be a strong, independent woman who don't need a man.
I know.
Like I'm not mad about it, but I also like part of me is like it would be kind of cool to see that as well too, just to get that.
I was just like I like go down the rabbit hole, so I was like, oh, Balthazar gave Emery his cloak, just like Azrael gave Gwen a cloak, just like Lucian gave Elaine a coat. I was like, huh. I was like, the only siphon color left is green. Emery's friendship bracelet is green. I was like, this is interesting.
Amazing.
Like, I want to see Balthazar get his siphons. He deserves that shit.
But I did like his character. I'm very excited to see where he factors in.
I love him so.
And he might be the liaison that, because I feel like Cassian is starting something, and he might be the one that like actually is able to finish it too, in terms of them being like, we have to, like, this has to change. This has to be better. We have to, you know.
I literally told Olivia, I was like, Cassian's gonna die because Sarah just basically showed us his replacement. She got so mad. I was like, she put in his fat boy replacement with Balthazar. Anyways, all right, Olivia, ask a question. I know you're burning.
What?
I know you're burning to ask a question, so ask.
I mean, I'm burning to ask a question, but I don't want to jump.
I don't want to cry anymore.
About the tattoo.
You ask it. I got bring me up when Hofast comes. Tap me in. Okay, ask it. I want to hear you ask it.
Okay. So Nesta has the tattoo on her back, stamped on her very heart by the mother when she saves Feyre and Nyx. In CC3, when Bryce gives Nesta an exchange, she says, figure out what that tattoo means and what those swords mean.
My favorite scene of CC3.
In regards to dust.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Melanie also, in addition to that question, me and Melanie also have, I don't know if I would say it's a correct theory. I would say it's more headcanon at this point of someone that is in CC3 and CC2 that I'll leave that up for now. But first question, think about the tattoo.
Yeah. So the tattoo, like, what do you think of Nesta getting the tattoo back and Cassian basically not getting the tattoo back, and if that's part of the foreshadowing?
I mean, 8 points, 8 courts definitely seems significant. So I don't know if that means. So here's the other thing too: is I don't know if that is suggesting that Nesta is destined for the 8th court, or also just as a thought, like, is there something that's pointing to maybe even someone over all the courts?
We talked about this.
So I don't know. There's just been enough little things where they keep talking about it didn't used to be the courts. There used to be one ruler over everything.
High King.
Yeah, and it just it keeps coming back, and that never really seemed to fit Feyre and Rhys. But
Oh,
the
I'm
more the
totally happy.
Trove keeps coming back, and the more we keep talking about these death gods and this like next order of magnitude, because um and the courts were very well pitted against someone like Hybern. But now that we're ramping up the stakes to what's the next bigger level,
Koshi.
and it feels like we could be talking about, okay, we're going up to we're graduating. It's not just the courts, it is the whole everything, that level of power. So I don't know, but that's rattling around in my brain too.
So you think that they're gonna go back to the beginning and deconstruct all of the courts into like one
I don't know.
or
Either that, or like, are we going to still have all the courts still need individual governance? We still need to have, they are all
like
their own
the high.
individual, yeah, like they all have their own individual like cultures and kind of groups within them. I think the courts will still serve to keep those people groups, like they still need individual leadership, but if they need that united, like this is the whole land though, and this is all of the Fae, we need someone over the top, because we have seen that the courts often fracture and they like to group together, and trying to get them all to make unified decisions has been a process, especially in wartime. And they all have to like politic at each other to try to get anything done. So if there was an overall ruler, like, I don't know.
I have like a crazy thought, which I thought of the other day and then I like forgot about it, but then you were bringing this up and now it like came back to my mind. So in CC3, when Celine's hologram is talking, she was saying that, Thea and Fionn both had their own lands, but they were also High King and High Queen out of all of the lands. And Eka brought up a point a while ago where if Hybern is Ireland and Cormac was, in mythology, the first High King of Ireland, we think that him and Nesta are endgame, but if that's a thing, like, could he be kind of the next ruler of the Hybern Island and Nesta's ruler of Dusk, but they're still High King and High Queen of all of Prythian?
Mm-hmm. I mean, see, I haven't read, because I saw you had a couple of questions related to him, and he is definitely like, I didn't know that character existed.
Oh my gosh.
That list of questions. So I feel like I literally couldn't comment a thing about that. Like I was reading some wiki articles and going, oh, okay, I think there's some compelling stuff there. My biggest thing though is that I do know where CC3 ended, and how at least the Hunt and Bryce storyline had a really solid button to it, the way that I don't think Feyre and Rhys had by the end of, like, because the fact that we had like an ending, but then it kind of eased into Frost and Starlight and then Silver Flames, where it doesn't feel like they have nice little endpoints, but not like this is done in the way that CC3 really had a
went out to live it. I was like, okay, they're done.
Yes, CC3 really felt like she was closing a lot on that. And so part of me is a little hesitant to say that that much of Crescent City is going to be playing that much into it now. I think it was important for understanding a lot of the context. And I think she left some threads there that maybe would explain, like, again, Rhys's sister being there.
Yeah.
And it's possible we may still see a couple of characters trickle over, but I'm not totally sure they're as relevant just based on the finality of that ending. So that's my only point of hesitation, where I'm like, I don't know if I, at least from a
we
writing
can definitely give you some context if you want to chime in with me here. You said you didn't read CC2. Do you care about spoilers?
No, you're good.
Okay. So,
because I do know where it ends. I do know the ending. I just don't know. Like, I know the start and finish. It's like a roadmap. Where, like, I don't know where you guys went together. I just know where it goes. So I don't think anything's going to be too ground shattering.
Basically, you know that we think Rune's mom is Rhys's sister. I'll start at that start point. So Cormac is Rune's cousin through his mother, which I find interesting. Now, Cormac has blonde hair, light brown eyes, dark roiling magic, as well as fire magic. Does that remind you of anybody?
I mean, I'm getting a little spring, a little autumn.
Yeah. Morrigan has blonde hair, light brown eyes, dark roiling magic, and is also Rhys's cousin. So I definitely think he's part of Moore's line, because it would line up.
Oh, so maybe that could be like maybe even if he's not relevant, at least a signpost of like, hey, beware more. This is more.
So Cormac basically by like the mid to end point of CC2, him and Rune kind of make up from their bullshit from their fathers, which is nice because it was kind of like a flipped mirror of Rhys and Tamlin, how they never made up and they got worse. But Rune and Cormac made up and they understood like, oh, our fathers really, pitted us against each other and we don't have to be this and we can actually be like good family members. So Cormac sits down and he's at the bar and he's like, I'm sorry, my father made me bitter like this and I don't want to be this person. And he's going to the Asteri castle to it has to do with like all the mech suits and all that stuff. But anyways, he was going to the Asteri castle and Tharion was helping him and they run into the lab workers and Pippa and the Asteri show up and basically Cormac tells Tharion to run. And then he kind of blows up the entire lab, including Pippa or whatever, with his fire magic. After she shoots him with a Gorsian bullet, but it goes right through him. So my thing here is, I know you haven't read Tog, but in Tog, Aelin has a book called The Walking Dead, which is actually in Jessica's library in Crescent City 3. The Walking Dead taught Aelin about word marks, which is what she has tattooed on her back from Rowan, which allowed her to fall through the worlds at the end of the series.
And is this similar to like the Bryce's tattoo as well?
Yes.
Like
yes.
that? Okay.
So in the beginning of CC2, when Cormac first shows up, Bryce notes that he has a giant band of black strange symbols around his arm, which is a word mark tattoo. Now that happens to be the same symbols that are carved into the peaks of the Dust Court in Prythian. And Rigelus also says at the end of CC2 that, your star will shine for your knights, the people who have undiluted bloodlines from the Dust Court. And then he says Prince Cormac, for example. So when Cormac blows up the lab with his fire magic and everything, Tharion kind of looks back and like Cormac's presumed dead. We don't see him again. But he notes that there's like a weird white rippling light in the sky when he looks back and he's like, oh, it's the Asteri. I'm like, first of all, there's no way that's the Asteri. Second of all, if he
your thought is that he could have fallen through the world.
Yeah, and ended up back in Prythian just like Bryce, because that's where they were destined to be. Because Cormac also has a prophecy. Because he went to an oracle in Avalon, he has a prophecy that states that he's destined to be with a princess with a star in her heart.
Nesta.
And in Akasif, it says the 8-pointed star stamped directly on her heart. And then at the end, after she's talking about her mating ceremony with Cassian or whatever, it says, the light in her chest brightened to a radiant sun. And so, as we know, when Bryce is like, the sun is the biggest star, and all this stuff. So I was like, his prophecy never said that he was gonna die. It just said that he was destined for a princess with a star in her heart. He's an undiluted bloodline from Dusk. He's related to Rhys's bloodline. He has the same symbols as the Dust Court. And
did he get those symbols, like, did his mom? Or like
we don't know how long he's had them, when he got them tattooed.
Yeah. Okay.
But we also know that from childhood, he had access to all of the Avalon archives. So he has been studying all of the magics of Avalon and Dusk and all of this stuff. And he's the only person in Crescent City who knows how to winnow, who can winnow, which is a Prythian power. He's the one who taught Bryce how to winnow.
Oh, so is that confirmed, like that is only a Prythian thing?
Because in the beginning of CC3, Bryce is like, oh, only a couple of us in Midgard. And Amren's like, only a couple of you. She's like, I'm assuming more do that here. She's like, yeah, like really any powerful fae can winnow here. So before Cormac taught Bryce, he was literally the only one on the planet who could winnow. And they're like, how can he teleport? They called it teleporting. They're like, how can he teleport? And I'm like, he knows all of the lore, everything from the archives. We don't know when he got his tattoo or why. And I'm like, he is definitely back in Prythian at some point. He went back to Prythian.
I do enough anime work, so we're just going full isekai mode. I love it.
That's the connection there. That's awesome.
Which is very funny. I mean, I love Portal Fantasy, don't get me wrong. So it's just so funny that that's just kind of been the weird way it's siphoned in recently.
But like also when Bryce fell and ended up in Prythian. Obviously, we know it was because she had the sword and it was drawn to Truth Teller or whatever. But I honestly think Cormac is destined to help Nesta lead Dusk. But there's just this like, it's just funny. There's just a thing where like he's the only one. Like he's the only one that has Prythian blood. And I made a point to say that because he grew up in Avalon, which was cut off from the rest of Lunathian by the mists, because it was connected to the Dusk Court and Prythian, they didn't have technology, so that's not an issue for him.
And honestly, too, if we're going back to the whole, Prythian being like the British Isles kind of thing, Avalon.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I
I'm
think
like, there's a lot there.
there's a lot of compelling stuff there, and that is feeling. It's hard to explain that like gut feeling, that like
Right?
writer gut feeling, but a lot of that feels a lot more where even if it's not like 100%, I think a lot of that is relevant, and I think a lot of that.
It's like it's a little too much to be coincidental to me.
I don't think it's coincidence, not at all.
I'm like, do you know about like the end of CC3 when like she sees everyone in like the afterworld or like the heaven scene? So
I know there was one, but I don't know the details.
So Bryce kind of like dies temporarily. Jessica, takes her place, obviously. But when she's there, she sees all of her dead friends, all of her dead people. Cormac's not there. I was like, well, Hubba's there, and Cormac's not there, who taught her how to winnow. And then we also see Ethan in the Bone Quarter. He's able to talk to Connor, and Connor's talking about, use our souls to do this and do the. Cormac's not in the Bone Quarter either. Where is he? And then the Rune bonus chapter, which comes after CC3, like after the events of CC3, he's like, oh, I hope he's happy with Sophie, or wherever his soul is now. Like, wherever. You're not going to just say, oh, I hope he's happy in heaven with Sophie. What's this wherever his soul is? What, Sarah? Very purposeful right there. But yeah, when Bryce falls through and she gets to Prythian or whatever, and then she goes back.
Interesting. They mention, the star in her heart too, and the amount of parallels there's been to like Howl's Moving Castle. Just little things.
Howl's Moving Castle. Oh, so good.
When Bryce goes back to Crescent City, and I forget whether it's like Darian or Flynn or someone's like, it's been 5 days, like you've been gone for 5 days, and she's like, what do you mean it's been 5 days? Because it's only been 1 day in Prythian, so they're like 4 days ahead of Prythian, I guess. So I'm like, there is a little time slippage. So my question is, like, if there's a difference between like a portal and a rift, or the different ways to world walk, could there have been some sort of time slippage with Cormac? And if he is of Mor's bloodline, okay, I think you know what I'm gonna say.
Oh.
I think he was the sleeping shadow that Mor saw in Echophas on her way to Valahan.
Oh.
Who do you think the shadow was?
I don't know. I didn't even think of that.
She's like, oh, something told her not to touch it, but it was foreign yet familiar. And I was like,
but I mean, there's so much with the different god characters and this whole other level of like these magical creatures that, who knows like what could be at play here. Like there's been so much hinted at that I'm like, there's so many pieces I could see being
familiar though. Familiar. Yeah. And like we know that Cormac is a shadow singer like Azrael, so he would be able to take shadow form, and especially if he was shot like a sleepy shadow, like he would be kind of hurt at that point. And I'm not going to go into this because it's a huge, long, real theory board thing that me and Eka did, but we have a theory that Mor and Eris are actually his biological parents because he never mentions having a mother.
Oh.
And he looks exactly like Mor.
Wow.
And so I'm like, if one of Mor's lies is that he's not telling people about her world walking ability, and Eris is just coming out of a rip in the world in Aka War, kind of suspicious.
Yeah, because
they knew stuff.
That's the reason why I was like, I don't know if Eris is supposed to be in play for Nesta necessarily, but I feel like he's definitely got to be in play for someone too.
Yeah.
but it could also be tied to dilution whenever we get to him and Vasa and all that stuff too. So God knows, like
Just the Eris and Moore like secret,
Mhm.
and I'm like, there is something there. There's something there that is not hatred, but like a mutual, I don't know, desperation maybe to
Yeah,
keep
and
the secret. So I guess it
I
kind of
don't think
flips
is like
between
just
that two.
totally bad all the way through either, too. I think
Oh
she
yeah.
is definitely it's somewhere along the like it's got to be tied again. I think a lot of the stuff keeps coming to a head, and kind of the stuff we were talking about with Elaine and with the Acheron sisters is again what happens when these women are pushed to the natural conclusion of these cultural things and how different things spill over and how you have to like be confronted and make awful decisions sometimes. And I think that something, and again with Reese, I think there's been a lot of intentionality with the way Reese keeps brushing things aside, and I think he's been doing that with Moore for way too long,
Mhm.
and he has not been. And
Yeah.
Nesta is kind of the like it could have gone way worse if it went the way Moore did, and Moore is going to be like the kind of um like she's gonna be the how it could have been like
Yeah.
gone very poorly
And
as a
it's like,
result.
why do you have a secret house in like a place of Hybern loyalists? I'm confused. I think that I'm gonna bring this up again. I brought this up with Henry. I'm sorry for all you people that are hearing me repeat myself, but I need everyone's opinions on these things so badly. But I think that she is the one that convinced Ianthe to ruin the wedding because they both have houses in Valahan.
Oh.
And she was the only one that knew Feyre was Reese's mate at that point because Reese came back and he was like, she's my
Ah.
mate. And I'm like, Ianthe was always pining after Lucian. She never wanted Tamlin. So what's her motivation for ruining the wedding?
Mm.
Moore was like, I won't tell anyone you're backstabbing them with Hybern as long as you stop this wedding for my cousin. And because I think, I don't know, it was weird when Hybern like stepped toward her and he's like, what a mighty queen you are. What a prize. And I was like, if he's never met you before, what? Morgan, what are you doing? But yeah, I was like, do you think it's possible that she convinced Ianthe to ruin the wedding for Reese?
Oh, it's possible, absolutely. It's just a matter of like how deep does the rabbit hole go,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it can. That's the crazy thing about the books is it can. So everything's on the table until proven otherwise.
Reese takes her back that first time and she like throws the shoe at him or whatever, and Moore's like, well, that went well. Like, Moore, what went well? You sneaky bitch. Tell me your secrets.
Real quick, before my phone decides to die, because I'm like at 9% and it won't let me charge without kicking me off every time I try to charge it. What are your thoughts on Claire Better, since she was Nesta's friend
Hmm.
and what happened to her in the first book? What are your thoughts on her not being brought up by Reese or Feyre or the IC?
For her trauma, like,
Mhm.
it was weird to me.
I mean, it could be. I mean, that's one where where there's not a lot tied to it, that it's just very possible it just wasn't thematically
Mm.
necessary, or it just kind of got lost in the like, oh, I didn't even think about that because there's been all
Yeah.
this other stuff going on and I just haven't even had time to address that. So that's entirely feasible. Um,
Mm.
I I don't have a strong thought that necessarily is implication of anything off the top of my head. I mean, it could um it totally depends because there could also be like there is just a sense that the Fae can do whatever, and that's just kind of akin to a natural disaster, or maybe they weren't actually that super close, or she was more of a friend of convenience, as Nesta was trying to just figure out how to create some social construct based on what she was used to and was raised to. Like, I could see like that, because you sometimes have like those like almost like a work friend where like you're
Yeah.
not that you don't care about them or they're bad
Yeah.
people, whatever, but if you're not in the same context with them, they're not necessarily coming to the forefront of your mind, or they're someone you stay in touch with long term. I don't know.
It's
I thought
funny that Pharaoh was just like, oh my God, Claire, and like Akawar. And I was like, let it go. I'm like, this is a Nesta thing, not a you thing. Let it go.
I genuinely don't know if it just wasn't. I mean, it's entirely feasible because I do know, like, as an author, you can write something and then be looking back and you go, oh, did I just never? I didn't really do anything with that. Oops. Well,
And meanwhile, there's people like us who are like, "Where's the thread, Sarah?"
yeah, and that's the danger when you're like everything could matter, but also maybe it doesn't.
Okay, what is your favorite Nesta crack ship, or what's the craziest one you've ever heard?
Oh, I haven't heard that many. I saw this question and I was like desperately trying to be like, who could, like, what is the match to Nesta's energy? And this is my like crack upon crack ship. There's in some ways part of me was like Nesta Danica, like I really think those two, like, and I don't even know if it would just be like BFFs or romantic or whatever, but like, I love the idea of Nesta and Dan, like the way Danica, I think, could let Nesta like let loose. And
Danica was like a looser Nesta, yeah.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
and the way I look at it is I can relate a lot to Nesta's very like, I need control. I need, like, especially if you have that level of anxiety and you have been grown up in such a high pressure environment where having someone like Danica who is so confident in her ability to let loose, if you can find someone who you can feel safe enough to let loose with, and I feel like Danica is one of the few people who can match Nesta's level of like, let it go. We're gonna do this. We're gonna have the best time.
Bring
Like,
Danica into the Valkyries. Have her resurrect.
yeah, oh my god, it would be the best Valkyrie. I love that notion.
A shape-shifting Valkyrie? Come on. Like,
Yeah.
I Olivia, didn't you have a crack ship that you wanted to? I feel like you said one the other day, and I forget what it was.
With Nesta?
Yeah.
No, I don't think I did.
Really?
Oh, hey,
What?
I had
What
another.
did
I just had another thought. I was like, okay, Nesta and Koschei,
Okay.
like full dark sorcerer. You could have like that level of like,
If he
or,
could
like,
shift into like a hot guy instead of an
yeah.
old raggedy man.
No. He would definitely have to be like absolutely like hot sorcerer. Like,
Although
immortal.
she was also disgusted with Lanthus, which I thought was kind of funny. She was like, "Oh, he's hot, but also gross."
So I could also like see or any of those like immortal. Like I feel like she's one of the few that could like match that kind of energy as
Nesta
well.
and the Bone Carver.
Or Adis. Nesta and Adis maybe would be a good one.
I love that. That's good.
I love that you love it. Because we all know Adis, he's smoking hot. Like I feel like him and Nesta could match each other as well. Like,
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like with Koschei, is like it would have to be like
yeah,
kind of because we haven't met him yet, so I don't know. But like just reputation alone, if he was like on the Adis level, yes.
Well, that makes sense because Nesta and Az are like really good friends. And as you guys know, I think that both Koshi and Adis are two of Azrael's essence daddies. So
well, let's not go down the S's,
I've had a lot of
daddy.
essence daddies.
Let's
so
not go down there.
never know. But
No,
I don't know. Go ahead.
I kind of like where I agree with you. I think Nesta's got this like immortal energy in a sense. And everyone's like, Nesta's power. What power could it be? Do you think she's a god? Do you think she's a witch queen? Is Nesta a witch? Like, I want to hear what you think about that.
I mean, again, it's another one of those anything is possible. But
Yeah.
I think there's really something just on a fundamental level with, and I love the description, and I really, again, I was like, this describes kind of where I've also felt really different is just that whole like there's a description of Nesta where it's something to the effect of like she was different, she was wrong, she had claws and teeth inside of her, like that whole description of her.
Yeah.
And just like she was more intense and more, and I remember like obviously I'm not magically capable and I'm not on that level, but that description really resonated in the way where I was just like I really struggled to find peers to match my energy because there was that like intensity that I was like I think and feel very vividly, and I have all this stuff like that a lot of people I don't think want to access, and
I'm so with you.
not like I'm a super special like main character type, but like just emotionally that's just such a very like a lot of people, it's hard to find someone who's willing to engage with you on that emotional level.
Yes.
I get
It's not
so hate on
impossible, but not a
Instagram.
lot of people. Yeah, not a
I'm
lot of
just so
people do.
intense
So
and they take it as aggression, and I'm like, I'm literally just trying to get my point across.
anyway, like
I'm like, like, I'm
Yeah, and also I'm like,
aggressive.
and it doesn't mean like you're super special. It just means like it's just a different type of emotional, like the way you access your emotions and the way you think about things. And like it's very like for lack of a better word, I'm like I have very Sagittarius energy, like to a crippling degree. So I kind of I relate to Nesta on that level. Like that's the best way I could think of to describe it is just like I am an INFJ Sagittarius and like I can I'm like this is
INTP Taurus, I know.
so
Oh, I know.
I'm just like I get that where it's so hard to find but when you find those people, you're like we are bonded for life because you get this, you get me.
My girls.
And so that's where I feel like Nesta really needs to find those like if she's matched by anyone, it's gonna have to be to match that kind of specific energy, if that makes sense.
I love that Gwen and Emery are her found family. Like that was my favorite part of Akasif. Like their sleepover
Yes.
was my favorite thing. I was like, she's letting loose. She's having fun. I love this.
And I think the big thing for her is she really wants she wants to both be able to listen to other people and have other people listen to her.
Yeah.
And I think that was the crippling problem with Feyre and the Inner Circle,
Listen.
is that she did not need anything fancy, but she did need someone to actively hear her and not try to fix it. The Inner Circle is full of crippling people pleaser fixer types that want to fix everything right away. And Nesta like is like, I need to just feel. I need to be allowed to feel. I need to be allowed to process. But I also understand that other people probably need that, and I want to do that with them. And I want us to be able to have that. So I think that's why her and Gwyn and Emery really work so well together, is they are the people who she can actually do that with.
I was just a little shocked with Feyre. I mean, I'm not Feyre's biggest fan at all, but I'm a little shocked with Feyre because she had this whole scene, and I can't recall what book it's in currently, but she has this whole scene where she's like, you know, Nesta's different. I think she feels everything too deeply, and that she can't just outwardly express everything, but she feels everything. And I was like, that was like really introspective, but then you're just gonna drop the ball on it. Like, Feyre, you can be so smart at times, and then you never follow through with like 2 seconds of brilliance, and then you're like, oh, I forgot. Like, come on.
Fair to Feyre. Feyre also is like a crippling basket case of PTSD that she's
Yeah.
not in any position to be fixing anyone. Like she literally, I think Frost and Starlight, we finally are like, okay, I think she's starting to get it. So clearly she doesn't have her whole, like, she doesn't have that wealth of maturity and stability by the time Silver Flame rolls around.
Like, you and Reese are trying to fix all your trauma with sex, but then you're gonna lock Nesta in a house for doing the same thing. How dare you?
It was interesting because Feyre's whole thing was Tamlin locks her in a house and that's not okay and stuff like that. And that's really abusive or wrong. And then they go and they turn and it's the exact same treatment to Nesta. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
And it's very much it is one of those things. And this is where also why I don't think the way she and Tamlin, their relationship went, that's why I don't think that automatically means that Tamlin was totally in the wrong either. Like he did some messed up stuff, but Feyre has been so embedded in her trauma and her issues, and she had baggage before she even went under the mountain that needed to be dealt with. Under the mountain just ripped it open. They could have ignored it. They could have maybe worked through it before under the mountain. They couldn't afterwards. And so what I think that is, and also to people who have gone through that and are just trying to figure their way out, I think there's also like a self-protection and fear response when anyone else is going through the same thing around you, because you remember how helpless you felt trying to get out of that, and you want to just fix it and make it go away because being just exposed to that is brutal. So I do feel like her relationship with Nesta and that was kind of a like initial fear response, and like I'm not mentally in a place where I could confront this yet, and then she doesn't, and that's why it goes so poorly, is because she's running away from it, even though she knows what it means in her life. She doesn't know what to do with it in other people's lives.
Oh, that's a good point.
Where she literally blames him for sure. I was like, you realize he had like 500 more years of trauma than even you do.
Mhm.
And he was also under the mountain with you. Like, you have no idea what happened to him under the mountain. You didn't ask, you didn't care. Like, yeah, you were so entrenched in your own trauma, but it's like you're not the only one with trauma from under the mountain. And I feel like she was just so in her own head. And even in ACOWAR, I'm like, why are you automatically going to be like, oh, he's a traitor? Like, you know his backstory. You know, like, about his father, what his father did to people, like what he's been fighting against this whole time. And I just don't understand how she can like be like, oh, I'm this traumatized and I need this sort of help and I react this way, but not see that Tamlin's reacting the same way that she does.
Mhm.
And it just drives me nuts.
And that's the frustrating thing when you're dealing with broken people is they are not automatically like even when they finally figure out how to fix themselves, that does not mean they have any skill sets to apply that outwardly yet.
And Nesta taking Farah's side. As an older sister, I do fully understand and appreciate that. But on the flip side of this, reading it through everyone's POV, I'm like, Nesta, he gave you riches, saved your life, restored your reputation, and healed your father's leg. And you're ripping into him at this meeting for only Farah's POV of what happened between them. Like, you know nothing about their relationship. Like, both in the meeting and in Akasip when she's like, you did this to us and you did it. But before that, she like knew like, oh, Farah, you're the reason why I'm like this. You told Ianthe this shit. So I'm like, I get why she's mad at Tamlin, but also like, why are you blaming him for the cauldron thing? You were there, you saw him actually fight for you. Like, I'm not understanding where.
And also at that point, I think part of what that is she has not accepted or come to terms with becoming Fae yet. And Tamlin is the absolute crux. He is the instigator. He is the whole reason they ended up in Prythian. He's the whole reason Feyre ended up there. And then Feyre got them into this whole mess as a result. He is ground zero, and he will always be the bad guy because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have had to go through any of this. And he would have fixed it eventually.
But the way that he was like, you killed Elaine and I was like, oh my God, we're on this whole Elaine thing again. Nesta!
Yeah.
Let Elaine go. She's her own person. She's not your child. Stop. But I also find it funny that Tamlin was the only one other than Devlon and the Illyrians who knew that she was like a witch. Because he goes, put that finger down, you witch. And the only other person that calls her a witch is Devlon. And I was like, huh. Is this another like Starborn connection or like Asteri connection or I don't know, because we know the Asteri back in the day had the tithe, which was originally people had to give up their magic to them. The Spring Court's connected to the tithe in a way, his awful father, grandfather, whatever, connected to Hybern, which I think were very Asteri coded, and Amarantha. And then there's the whole Illyrians like actually being made by the Asteri. So I was like, is this like maybe I don't know. Again, a Tog thing. I know you didn't read Tog, but the Asteri are the Valg, and we know that the Valg made the witches and Tog. So I'm like, is this where the whole Maasverse thing is coming together, where certain groups know about the witches and can recognize a witch just by
and
like
I also haven't gotten to Tog yet. So I'm like, for me, witches don't have a context yet in her unit.
Yeah.
So I can see, so it's kind of hard for me to be like, I don't know what totally being a witch entails yet. And if that's just meant as like you're a strong magic user versus like, is there even more intentionality behind this? Like, and would they know that? You know, like.
So the witches and Tog are half, so they call them Valg, but basically I figured out from CC3 that they're Asteri, but basically they are half Asteri, half Fae. They were brought to be both. And the ones like Manon have gold eyes and they're descended from like the kings, like the Valg kings, which are like evil or whatever. But basically they're half Fae and half Asteri. So I was like, is this the trickle down bloodline thing where
so we're getting kind of like an almost like a Nephilim kind of situation.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people that are like mixes of species. And it kind of shows up in that whole thing. And like even going back to like Ethan in Crescent City when he sees the Underking and he's like enemy, his blood roared that he was an enemy. And I was like, that's also a Tog thing, which swearing, but I'm like, Sarah, Sarah, I just need her to release like a family tree because I need to know who's related to who because everyone's related to everyone at this point.
Yeah.
Real quick, I gotta go because my phone is at 2%, and I don't want to like crap out in the middle of something. So keep going,
Yeah.
Natalie. Amazing to see you and talk to you. I will catch you guys later. Ta.
Good luck with the voice
We'll
acting.
finish the questions.
Thank
Don't worry.
you so much.
See you later, girl.
It is a little warm in here. I keep forgetting every time I bring a hot beverage in the booth, I will get mostly warm. I usually just bring like my water in, but I was like, oh, I'm gonna be in here for a couple hours. I should make some coffee. And then I'm in here every time because like if my voice is sore and I bring tea in, I'm like, oh, I should have worn like a tank top or something because we've had unseasonable amounts of snow.
Yeah.
Oh.
The house has been so cold. So I've been going around wearing a bunch of layers and was thinking like, oh, I definitely want to have a sweatshirt on because it's cold. And now I'm like, oh, it was going to get up. Like today was the first day it was going to really melt and get up to a decent temperature. And now I'm slightly going, oh, I calculated poorly.
Don't forget that like Olivia and Eka are in Arizona and they don't get snow. Like it's snowing here right now. I'm like, we were actually supposed to get a blizzard today, which is why I was kind of panicking that my Wi-Fi was going to conk out. It was not a huge blizzard, but we got like 5 inches.
I mean, I'm from Wisconsin, so anytime, we're just like, oh, we only got like 4 inches. They're like, we got 4 inches. And I'm like, only? Like,
I'm in Boston, so yeah, we get it. We get it. Yeah, I did not mean to overwhelm you with theories, but I was just like,
no.
do you know the context? Does she not know the context?
No, it's so fascinating. Like, it
Wanna
makes
know the context?
it's so interesting because I already, I've read some of the books, but not all of it. And then the more I hear about more stuff, I'm like, oh, there's more context and there's more stuff going
I was
on.
like, I literally have like highlights for like all of my major theories. And when I tell you, I get like random DMs all the time. People that are like, holy shit, I never thought of this and this totally makes sense. And oh my God. And then I just go in a whole thing and I'm like, why do you people send me this? Because now I'm going to go on a rant and I can't stop myself. I'm going on a rant. But like I posted my whole course to theory yesterday and like the Messian being a maid bond thing. And actually I didn't bring this up when you were talking about the Symphonia, but she already knows about this. I've ranted about this a million times. But I'm bringing up the Symphonia thread.
You're bringing it up
for you. But people claim that when Nesta and Cassian have sex after that scene, when there's like the golden threads flowed between them and all of this stuff, and like there's like the harp and the horn symbolism and all of this stuff, I was like, that is very made. That is very not just a bond snap to me. Because they're like, oh, that was the mate bond snapping. I was like, that doesn't seem like the mate bond snapping at all to me.
No, I do think it comes from a genuine place of love that Nesta has for Cassian, but if she's trying to force it,
because
it's not the same.
Yeah, it's not the same. There's multiple threads. Multiple threads is not a mate bond. A mate bond is one thread, Olivia. And gold.
So you feel the multiple threads is of significance, Natalie?
I don't know about that, but I mean that's an interesting reason to identify like a question with it. I just think more thematically the number like you know how people say like twice is what do they call it? It's like
3 times is literally
it's a pattern and has some significance. And I think there's enough multiple things. Like if there's only like one of those, I'd be like, oh, okay, maybe. But like
there's like 500 clues that Nessie is like, no.
Yeah, I think there's enough potential evidence in enough ways like that even if some of them are red herrings, I think there's still enough that it's all pointing in that direction.
And there's like 2 branches off of this that I have on the board, but one of them is Amren when she's like, be careful when you're fucking her. She can turn you into whatever she wants with I was like, this is like the Blades. Like the Blades. When she was literally just getting her frustration out on the Blades, she was literally just loving Cassian, and like this shit just happens.
Yeah,
I think that's when the bond was made.
The fact that Amren really spells that out, I think, was really the final knife.
Final.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that didn't even cross. Like Amren said it, and I was like, oh, whatever.
Oh God,
Amren's just a pessimist. It's not a big deal. So that's amazing that you think it's like a significant foreshadowing.
And then the other branch off of that is later when they're trying to bespell the mask in Hewn City, and Helion is there. And she's like, "Oh, is that your Pegasus outside? He's so beautiful." I was like, "Dust Court, Nesta, the Pegasus. Come on." And then when Helion is describing spells, because he's talking about the spell from the crown that are on the Autumn Court soldiers that he like tried to go into the minds of and all of this stuff. And he's describing the spells as threads wrapped around a person. And I go, these are the threads right here. Another instance of spelling it out for you.
Mhm.
So you think that both of these are like not coincidental?
Collectively, no. I have a hard time thinking that that's not and again, it's weird. A lot of it's vibes and gut based too. It just doesn't, especially given the way that like Feyre and Rhys and even Hunt and Bryce, like from the get-go, she just really, when she has her like OTP, kind of like pairings, she really just hammers like all the ways they really fit home. And having read
I
enough,
think that she did that with Elaine and Lucian. I have boys of close with all that stuff, including her staring at him over Nesta's shoulder. But
I think I wonder though how much of that is tied to her seer abilities and how much she's seeing certain things and then like can't help but see little things that she's already foreseen and just starting to notice things about people that she might not have had context for. And I feel like that explains a lot of her weird behaviors is because she's like, oh, I saw that. Oh
I
no.
will send you my illusion.
What do you think she like? If you were to say something that she saw during that cauldron scene, what would you say when Elaine was staring at Lucian? Like, what do you think maybe she was seeing, or what was going on there?
I mean, if she's like envisioning that they are going to be intertwined, but like somehow it's not clicking into place, or like she's somehow, because she has no context for a lot of this stuff too. So she might be seeing stuff where she's like, what does that mean? And then later on, we're going to see things and she goes, that's what that was. Oh no, that makes so much more sense. Like, I feel like, because a lot of times too, you talk about like, or a lot of characters when they have visions, it's all like weird sensory stuff and it's all jumbled together and it's a big puzzle. And sometimes without you can like be like, I saw this, this, and this, and this. I don't know what that means. These are the things. And then as they happen, you can start to put the pieces together. I feel like it's like that. And then as she's seeing people for the first time, or she's seeing them do or say something, and it's starting to put pieces together, and she doesn't know what it means yet. And that's what I think is probably more going on, is she's being overwhelmed with all this information she has no context for. And she doesn't know how to process it. She doesn't know what to do with it. She doesn't know where to put it. But that's what I think explains a lot of her weird behavior and why she's like looking at people weird, but also like she might have a sense of like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know this person is safe. I know this person might not be. I know there's something weird about this person.
It'll take more than that to kill me. No, it will not.
Yeah. Little things like that where, and she might be like, that probably happens like 1,000 years from now. I didn't think that would happen now. Like,
And everyone's like, oh, it was the Hybern scene. It was the Hybern scene. I was like, I feel like if it was the Hybern scene, she would have mentioned her sister lying on top of him. Like, and also his wings were shredded in that thing. And he's like, oh, it won't take like my wings getting shredded to kill me. And I'm like, but his wings were shredded in that scene. And he was like very detrimentally hurt in that scene. So I'm like, it's not going to be something, I don't think, that traumatic when he dies. Like, he's gonna die, but I feel like it's not gonna have to do with his wings or anything like that.
My gut feeling is it'll somehow be tied to Mor being the traitor somehow. And that it'll be in inner court level, like he's just gonna get stabbed. There's just gonna be something, and it's gonna somehow. I don't know if Nesta won't be there to fix it, or it'll be beyond her magic, or what she knows how to do with her magic.
She already has that bargain like tattoo with the cauldron, so like she can't really make any more bargains for anybody. Is what I saw there. But I also don't know whether you do have a point with like the inner court stuff. But I also feel like with all of his comparisons to Annalius, which there's a lot in Akasith, from Emery, from Nesta, from I think was it Haz or Rhys? Someone says that again as well. So I'm like, is there going to be like some sort of with the harp or something? Is there going to be some sort of invasion of more, I don't know, death gods or Valk, or like, is he going to die like an Alias holding the line on Ramiel with that stone archway? Because as we know, Nesta fell into that archway and she's like, she could feel breath on her neck and she could feel like weirdness from it. So I'm like, is he going to be the next Annelius?
And also, he had such a strong reaction to Lanthus too. Like, is that foreshadowing his, like that
Yeah.
death gods and like that something at that level is his undoing? Like,
And Blue Honest, like going after his heart, but it's like a monster that eats females was weird to me. And there's a scene where forgetting the context. I think it's when is it when he's flying Nesta to Ramiel or maybe before that? But there's a line where it says like Cassian can't seem to ignore the ancient summons of Ramiel. And I was like, that's really weird after we find out about like the archway there and everything like weird there.
I could also see there being some tie to how much he is trying to refine, or he's trying to right kind of the wrongs of the Illyrian society, and them even turning on him in some capacity would be that would be devastating. Like, there's so
Nesta
many
being
ways this
summoned
could go
to
so
dusk and then
badly.
Cassian being summoned to the area. Yeah, it's weird. But I also had this weird thing before we read Crescent City, and you'll remember this, Olivia, where I said simply, what if an allergy takes him out? Because we know that
Oh
like
my gosh.
the
Yes.
the only human detriment that any of these Fae have, weirdly enough, is Cassian having allergies.
Mm.
Why
And
do
I could,
he have allergies?
and also that would be so interesting because him being so much about his strength and I can fight anything, but him succumbing to something that he can't physically combat.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, I don't know if it's allergies, but maybe like that's the indication that it's magic or poison or something that is beyond, like, if he can't punch it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And
Oh
like
my
he's
word.
just going to spring and like getting all scratchy and like he hates it there because he feels out of control. He can't physically fight allergies, right? I don't know. I don't know. Could someone poison him?
And
Maybe.
that's why that's kind of more where the inner court stuff feels thematically more like, because that's a place where he's going to let his guard down and where he could be more susceptible to poison or something along those
This
lines.
kind of goes to Ekka's theory though, where could it be an evil Elaine thing? Because she brought up the fact, I don't think she got to ask you, but she brought up the fact that maybe when she was like gardening in the human lands or whatever, like maybe she was growing like poisonous plants and maybe she was, dabbling in some deeper stuff that we don't know about. So maybe because like both of them can scry, so maybe both of them are some sort of witches. So like potions, dangerous plants, and the fact that Elaine is somehow all of a sudden all into like baking is kind of weird. I don't know. Like, could you be putting stuff in the baked goods? I just find the scene where she says, "No, you will not," about Cassian with him shoving a blueberry muffin in his mouth and then her being like, "Oh, I'm gonna start learning how to bake." I was like,
I don't know what her motivation against him would be, is really the only thing.
"Oh,
I do think
did she
there's
see
a
something?"
plot point to her baking and her knowledge of plants and herbs and all that. I think that's important. I just don't know if I would necessarily, I don't know if there's enough that I could connect that to her wanting him dead intentionally anyway.
Could it be
Who would you say would want him dead? Like if you were, who would? He's so likable.
He is. And so I more think he's going to be an unintended casualty of something. If either that or he's going to be caught up in the middle of something with the death gods that he can't come back from. So my thought is either one of the death gods is going to take him out with magic that they can't combat yet, or
Yeah.
something with Moore's betrayal is going to go horribly wrong, or maybe horribly right, and they just don't know that she's at that level and like she has that much of a grudge for some reason, or he's going to be like, or she knows that will hurt Reese, and
The,
like
o-
I could see more of that level.
the only reason why I think it's going to be someone he knows or something purposeful is because people always forget that when he went to the bone carver, and he saw whoever the bone carver was, he was stunned. And he doesn't tell anybody who he saw whatsoever. Like, I could see him being stunned if it was, Flowery Elaine, or if it was Moore, or if it was like anybody he knew. Like with Reese, we know that he saw Jurian, and he sees Jurian as a threat for some reason, but Jurian knows all his secrets from under the mountain. We know that like Feyre saw Nyx. Nyx would have ended up killing her. So like, who
But
did
also, isn't that thing where like Nyx has wings though? And
well, I personally think that was a consequence of Rhys and Feyre breaking the magic of the bargain during the High Lords meeting. Because Rhys says, oh, if anybody attacks anybody and it goes against the magic bargain of a ceasefire at this meeting, it'll take retribution in the form of a life. So then I was like, gave Nyx wings to kill her, because also they had that like death pact by that point too, so it would also kill Rhys.
But I also feel like she would point that out in some capacity. I don't know. That is interesting, and I do think
like, what's the consequence then? Like, I just like,
oh my gosh,
like, it is gonna be break the bargain though. That's the thing. Like, Feyre and Rhys broke the magic of the bargain. I'm like, where is that retribution from the cauldron? Like, I'm just.
That's why I was like,
is that the Rhys being unhinged now? Like,
yeah, leading to Cassian's death somehow.
Gosh, oh my gosh. Okay, so
that cauldron is going through Nesta, and she's kind of the channel of it.
Oh my gosh.
He's also could Cassian have seen Rhys? Could Rhys do something?
Yeah.
His rage.
Listen to what go along that line, Natalie. You just you're scratching something really important, and I feel it, and I'm gonna bring that up. That's huge.
Yeah, I think there's something about that death pact in that not being unfulfilled. That is absolutely something. She's going to pull that back. Like, she's going to tell it. We're going to know if that's the fact. Like, there's no way she's just going to casually like drop that in there and they're not be like, we're going to sit down and go, wait, what happened? Because she always, if it's that level of importance, she's going to tell us. So if that, somehow goes back to the cauldron, like it is subtly influencing Rhys's behavior somehow, and he is becoming more volatile.
You gotta read the bonus chapter. He's so unhinged.
Yeah, like and Cassian is caught in the middle of that, especially the fact that Nesta is kind of the physical embodiment of the cauldron's powers too, that by her bonding with him, it's pushing him even more to a point where he would be in conflict with Rhys, or because they are already at each other's throats, like, and
I have so many thoughts on this
in a moment, like, I don't know, like, I don't know, I can see it.
So both
go ahead.
So both Rhys and Nesta can enter the void, can enter the cauldron, which is a weird thing to me. Like, Rhys went into the cauldron to pull Nesta from her nightmare. Rhys went into the cauldron to pull Amren from it when he died. Rhys technically went into the cauldron to bring Feyre back to life. So it's kind of a thing where, like, we don't know what anybody in the inner circle knows. We don't know if Rhys is hiding secrets about his powers, if Azriel is, if Cassian is, all this stuff. But then it's also like, when Nesta saved them from, or when Nesta brought Feyre and Nyx back to life, and like Rhys didn't actually die or anything, like, was that like a kind of fulfillment of the bargain? Did Feyre's tattoo disappear? We don't know. We're not in Feyre's POV. But then there's also the thing where I have to go back and I think about how many times it's said like, oh, bargains are very specific to the wording that you put. So the wording of the bargain wasn't actually really like a death pact, but the wording of the bargain was like, we promise to leave this world together. So I'm like, is this more of a world walking thing and not a death thing? Because now that we know people can world walk, and I think Rhys is part of Steri.
That could be interesting.
That's why he can go into the void.
Almost, I mean, I could almost see them, like, if the inner circle isn't there and they don't have, like, I could very easily see Rhys and Feyre being very detached from Prythian if the right circumstances were the case. And I don't know if that means, oh, hey, we're going to go exile with your sister over in Crescent City, over there, like what that could mean, and then that would leave kind of that open space where, is like someone like Azriel taking over the Night Court, and then Dusk Court is where Nesta's at, and that's where things are getting distributed. Like, because that is kind of the one thing, is that Feyre and Rhys are really not like, they love the I'm sorry, again, my names, the city. Why can't I think of, is it
Polaris.
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 My brain was locked on Illyria or something like
Illyria.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Valaris.
Yeah.
They love Valaris. Like, they feel the most at home there, and you can tell like that's the vibe they want. And like, you can tell they're trying, or Feyre's trying to make community there, but also like Rhys is so removed from his people when it's not convenient, or when it's not like, I don't know. They have such a weird magically altered, like, or magically impacted relationship, where I could see that kind of backfiring on them in a way where they may have like unmoored themselves from that world enough that they could be elsewhere. I don't know.
We need to have you back here after you finish Tog, because they're okay. In Akathas, Rhys sees Aelin falling through the world, and he slows her down with his power. She's like the red comet that everybody else sees. Now, Sarah has actually confirmed that while everybody else in the inner circle saw a red comet, Rhys actually saw Aelin herself as a person. For me, like, that far away is kind of suspicious, and enough to slow her down. And like, when Feyre's not looking was kind of weird. But the other thing to me is like, Aelin was falling through worlds to defeat Maeve. And Maeve is, I don't know if you've heard through the fandom.
I don't know if you should tell her. I don't think you should say anything.
Very related. And everyone thinks that they're related, basically. It's a theory, but everyone thinks that Rhys is like a descendant of Maeve. And so I'm like, the fact that he slowed her down to go back to her world to like defeat his evil ancestor is like kind of weird. So it connects to this, because I think that maybe they're going to convince Nesta to use the harp to send them back to the Tog world for some reason, to figure out like why Aelin fell through their world. And like, because there was a really deep, purposeful thing there where I'm like, why is she outwardly telling the fandom that like, oh yeah, Rhys saw Aelin as a person, but everyone else saw a red star? And then in Akasif, more actually brings up like, oh, he was rattled for days after seeing that red comet shoot through the sky in Valaris, but like, she didn't see a person. Rhys saw a person, but he didn't tell anyone he saw a person. So I'm like, what does he know? And like, are they going to go back to the Tog world for this part? Is this the whole we'll leave the world together thing? I don't know.
I could also see too I mean, doesn't Crescent City talks about the doors between the worlds used to be much more open, and
yeah,
and so if that is the natural state of this world, and a lot of like, it could be argued that she may be trying to, or there may be kind of a natural bent that the world is trying to rewrite itself, and the world is kind of demanding that these gates be open in some capacity, and that could be her end game. I could also see too, if we're getting to the point where we're fighting chthonic entities, like, do we need multiple worlds worth of power sets? Avengers Endgame style. Like,
yes!
Again,
that's what we're saying. Like Twilight of the Gods and shit. I have to explain all this shit. Her new trilogy, I'm so excited for it, and I'm so excited for it. I'm like, it has to explain all the gods, the planets, the crossings, all this stuff, because there is such a huge fight in the fandom where I am on the side of where Tog is the past world, the past. From all the clues we get from the Asteri, from like Lydia and Cormac having Aelin's power, and like Rhys having Maeve's power, and like, I think they're all descendants. It lines up to me for the timeline with the 15,000 years thing, the books being in Crescent City and Prithian and all this shit. I think it's the past, but there's a whole fight where like half of us are like, it's the past, it's proven in Crescent City 3 and Akasif, and we get that time itself is a realm and it's one of the harps of the string and all of this stuff. And all the time slippage thing, like one planet could be 15,000 years ago, but this planet's only 4 days ago. Like, that's how I'm seeing it with all the clues, but there's also half of the fandom where it's like, no, they're all at the same time and the doors can just open and they can just walk from world to world. So I'm like, I just want her to like tell us, like, is Todd the past, and is Lydia and Cormac and Rhys and all these people the descendants? Like, I think, and Tamlin and all this.
Has she been asked and said, I can't say that?
She hasn't been asked. Nobody's
So
freaking asked her. It's so
that would be, I think, the smoking gun is if
I
you
know.
had to ask, if someone could ask and she couldn't confirm that, then I would say then that's very much something that should be in play.
But like you say, two is a coincidence, three is a pattern. I'm like, Tamlin has a lot of Aelin's possessions. Lydia has one of the possessions and the powers like trickling down. I'm like,
I mean, they could be potentially opening up the Tog universe in modern day and being able to say, hey, we
and
have
just the
these possessions.
descendants.
Yeah, and it's so it's not necessarily those characters, but still that world too.
Okay,
Yes.
I feel validated. Like,
So because I know we're getting short on time, I want to bring up Hofast, if that's okay. Instead of Tog, I want to get away from Tog
Yeah.
because Natalie needs to read
Yeah,
it.
we're gonna bring you back when you're done with Tog.
Okay, okay.
So, do you know anything about the Hofast bonus chapter between Nesta, Cassian, and Rhysand?
No, not that one.
Okay. Do you want us to kind of give you a brief summary? Okay. So you know how in the end of Silver Flames, Nesta and Rhysand, they were fighting the whole time. And in the end, it's like they seemed like they were going to turn over a new leaf. At least that was my impression.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I thought they'd be friends and, or things would get better. So in the bonus chapter in Hofast, we see that Nesta has given Bryce the mask. Okay. Rhys, in a fit, is flying from across Prithian because Bryce's parents end up in Rhysand's house. Okay, so I don't know if you had heard that.
Yeah.
And Nesta and Ember hit it off, and they're really good friends. So Rhys comes to yell at Nesta.
Oh, wait, you forgot.
Oh, go ahead.
You forgot when Ember is looking out the window and she's like, there's like a dark storm coming, and she's like very uneasy, and she's like, I don't feel good about this. Like she knows it's something very dangerous. And it's like just pitch black coming from the horizon, winking out the stars, covering all the lights of the city coming in. And like he blasts through the windows of the house in a rage. And then the POV we get is just them like waking up from that, I guess, which the assumption is that Azriel kind of shielded them. Obviously, they probably would have died if he exploded the house on them, but Azriel was like their guard while they were there. But yeah, go ahead, take it. I just had to say that he exploded the house on humans because hypocrite with Tamlin, but go ahead.
So anyways, so okay, so basically the first time, I can't remember where Cassian comes into play, but so basically Rhys and Nesta get in this really ugly fight about the mask. I mean, Rhysand is screaming and yelling at us. It's really bad. And she handles it really well. She's very calm and she takes him yelling. And it sounds like a couple days later, Rhys is still pissed off.
It's the next day.
The next day. And
Cassian's just like, why don't we finish this in the morning when everyone's refreshed?
Yeah. Cassian was there, but he didn't stand up for Nesta. He let Rhysand say what he's gonna say, what he said
once, and then he was like Rhys, but then like he lets him talk over him and all that shit. And then
so Rhys is chastising Nesta. Nesta's taking it. Cassian's not really standing up for her. He's like, Rhys, let's table this and like bring it back in the morning. Okay. So then what happens is Rhys, Nesta, Cassian, and Feyre are down at their river house. And it sounds like Rhysand was going after Nesta again. Feyre said, you need to cut it out and take her to the House of Wind, where Ember is, okay? So Cassian
Feyre, yeah, Nesta mentions off page that Feyre's like, cut it out, let's do this civilly, stop treating my sister this way, right? And then she meets Ember and she's telling Ember this, and Ember's like, so your mate just like took you back down here so he could continue like against your sister's orders or whatever. And she's like, I guess, but like, no, I don't know. And she's kind of wishy-washy about Cassian and all of that, which I thought was mean, but
So yeah, the thing is so basically the moral of the chapter is that Rhysand and Nesta are fighting again. We don't see Cassian really stepping up for Nesta or like protecting her, but letting it happen. We see Nesta kind of upset and like getting comfort from Ember. But we also see Bryce call Cassian Nesta's mate or smelled like her mate. So I just wanted to get your opinion. Kind of, I know it's a really rough summary, but go ahead, Melanie.
Oh, I was just gonna say to note that when they had originally gone back up to, the bedrooms or whatever, and everyone else leaves, Ember is like, are they always like this with you? And like, did I get you in trouble or whatever? And she's like, none more than I usually am. And then Ember notes like, oh, it was definitely worse. Like she could tell by like her body language and like how defeated she looked and how like kind of depressed she looked. And I was like, the fact that like Ember, a total stranger, can like notice this and like Cassian just doesn't care is like, because yeah, Nesta can be like, I'm fine, Cassian, but like when a girl tells you they're fine, they're not fine. Especially when your brother is screaming in their face that they're gonna execute you 3 times. And then Amryn was like, you better hope Farrah can change his mind. So like the moral was like Rhys threatened to kill her a few times.
Rhys threatened to kill Nesta.
Yeah, like execute her, I think was the word. And Amryn's like, you better hope Farrah can change his mind.
Yeah.
I don't
And
think Farrah's gonna like let him kill her. Come on.
no, I don't think Feyre's not gonna do that. Like, especially after Nesta saved her kid and they had the level of like their relationship repair, I think, is going to make following books really interesting because they, I think, are going to be more on the same page. And and there's so much about the connection between the sisters that I think the through line of the ACOTAR main series is about those three healing their relationship, and that is trumps even their individual romantic.
But that's why the whole thing,
But
like Cassian taking her away from Farrah to have Rhys continue to bring her
and
away from Farrah is an issue.
And that is where the interesting thing with Rhys behaving that way is, I mean, I almost, that's why I almost do wonder if that is more of a point that Dan might get to the point where he's the one who kills Cassian.
See, I was afraid you were going to say that.
Is that like at that level? Because Cassian, I think Cassian's big issue is that he's such a he wants to keep the peace and he is so close to Rhys.
Royal dog, like they call him.
Hold on, Melanie, let her say it.
But I don't think he's going to default to, he'd never actually do it. I don't think if he thought he would say yes or would do this if he didn't actually think that Rhys was capable of that. And I think that's going to be his undoing, is he just is going to underestimate the kind of level to which Rhys is not okay. And that's, or at least that's where my gut is going, if that's what's going on, because Rhys, his whole universe and his whole focus keeps being around Feyre. And I could see, like, if Nesta gave away the mask, especially if because Nesta spent all that time with Bryce kind of feeling her out and making sure she was okay, and they were kind of doing that. And so I feel like Bryce is assuming Cassian's her mate, probably because Nesta said she has a mate.
Yeah,
and
I have a mate.
He's the obvious, clearly romantically involved. Why wouldn't you think that's her mate?
Yeah.
But the fact that Rhysand can flip that much, he's thinking, oh, she took the mask away. She's threatening my life. She's threatening mine, Feyre, my children. Again, his whole thing is anything that threatens them, not okay, and I will not allow it.
Put the whole city at risk.
And he will not allow anyone else to make decisions. He will not allow anyone else to do anything that puts him out of control. And there's got to be repercussions for that.
Is in the bonus chapter.
All right. Okay, Natalie.
Nesta says, the trove answers to me, obeys me. I am not your subject to be punished as you please.
And that is the big thing. Rhys is still under the delusion that Nesta is his subject. She has never formally joined the court. She is there as a guest.
And he keeps going at her, and Ember gets up from the breakfast table, and it's so funny because it's like, Azriel didn't make a move to stop her, which I was like, yes, Azriel. Stomps over to the fucking balcony where they're talking, and she goes, lay the off of her. Mm-hmm. Like, stop. And he's like, I didn't speak to you. Like, I wasn't talking to you. Like, this is none of your business. And she's like, well, if you didn't want it to be my business, you shouldn't have interrupted my breakfast. And she gives it right back to him. And she's so
dealing with Einar. So I love that. She's like, listen, I know you guys are all the fucking same. Knock it off.
Yeah. And she's like, she faced true evil before. She can stare down this male too. And it's hilarious. And just when she, like, Nesta makes a point where Ember asks her a question about Cassian, and she's like, oh, like, why wouldn't your mate say something, or like something like that? And it's like Nesta's actually like tearing up and like really emotional. And like nobody's like helping her out. Nobody's on her side until Nesta does that. And then it's like Nesta looked at her with like longing and gratitude because like like Cassian's not even sticking up for her here.
That's
And
the
then
thing.
the
I think
robes.
they all are so enamored with Reese. They cannot see that he's capable of this. And and because they're like, we know he means well. And the end result has always been that nothing bad ever
This
happened.
happens.
So
We're
why would we stop him? He's all bluster. He wouldn't do that to us because we know he's cool with us,
Mhm.
but he is terrible to everyone who he doesn't like, and it's gonna bite him in the ass.
I see. The funny thing with that is one that as a Nesta didn't tell him that Bryce was his relative, and that's why he hates Bryce so much. Oh yeah, he was like, you should have just swung Ataraxia at her throat the minute she came through the portal, like completely unhinged, weird. But also the fact that when Reese blew up on Azriel in his bonus chapter in Akasif with the whole Elaine and Gwen thing,
Mhm.
the fact that Azriel is the one that could see how unhinged he was getting and allowed Ember to go and speak her mind because it was like he didn't make a move to stop her. And I was like, this is why Azriel's leaving the IC. I can tell you right now.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah, and I think, and this is where I think Azrael's going to come redeem himself eventually, or be a much more interesting character. And that's the thing. I think he and Elaine, like Elaine, I at least thematically I enjoy, and I can see the thing, and she's doing that with Azrael too. But I'm like, okay, if you're setting all the bowling pins up, I'm sure I will enjoy him in future books. But right now,
You're not the only one. A lot of people feel that way. A lot. I did for a very long time too. I felt the same way.
I have a really important mythology question for you because this has grated on my mind since this character came into play. What part do you think that Clotho is going to play? And do you think she's as suspicious as I do?
Clotho, I could see being, I mean, she, I think, is going to be our source of lore and information about
Really?
the deity characters. I think she is like she's the weird nerd in the corner who's put a lot of pieces together.
Uh-huh.
She is the lore keeper. And I feel like she's kind of the obnoxious, like probably on spectrum level of this is her special interest. She is
Yes.
like dedicated to this and it's off-putting to most people. But when it comes to her, I think she's going to be delivering a lot of lore
Because
coming
like
up.
there being the spinner of fate in mythology, I was just like, is she one of the like mother's handmaidens almost?
I mean, she could be directly have some connection, but I think it's more just she is the one that she's the girl with the tabs. You know, she's the one who's been like, wait a second, and she pulled on one thread and she went,
She's like
oh,
the Cormac of Prythian with all the lore. Because the suspicious part to me is that Gwen specifically tells Nesta, like, oh, nobody goes under level 7, nobody when Bryaxis was there and all that stuff, right? And then she's like, oh, we're having this service. You should come. Clotho wants you to come. And then it turns out that like Clotho got these ancient songs in the old Fey language from below level 7, which was weird. The same songs that lured Nesta to the harp. So I was like,
mhm.
does Clotho like I know that Meryl is the one doing all the research and everything, but is Clotho the one pulling the strings with Meryl and Gwen and Nesta and like the trope? Like, what does she know about this? Because she is the one that got the music that led Nesta to the harp when Gwen was singing,
Mhm.
which could lead to the whole does she know Gwen's a light singer and she doesn't even know thing, but like it's weird that Gwen was singing that particular song and that's what led Nesta to the harp under the prison.
There could also be too that again, if these like the mother is trying to put things back the way that there's a lot of little divine movements of like you should do this, you should do this, and this is going to help them put the pieces together in the long run, kind of because that tends to be in mythology. Kind of deities are mostly hands off, but they will give you little goalposts or they will do
Which is
subtle things to manipulate, and they're constantly trying to checkmate each other by in those sorts of ways that could be very much where that's going.
I
and
love that. That is awesome how you said that.
I totally think that she's like a yeah, like a deity character because there's like
See.
I don't know, like Meryl is awful to Gwen. She's like such a bully, but for some reason Clotho is like connected to her, and then like there's like or I have this theory. There's not really a theory, but it's I have a theory that like Meryl was the priestess that Baxian scented behind um what was it? There's like a statue in Crescent, or like a temple in Crescent City. Urd's temple. It was Urd's temple in Crescent City. And so Baxian makes a note that like when they went down the secret staircase to escape Pippa or whatever, he's like, oh, like I sense that like a priestess has been down here. Like, that's really weird because like it seems like nobody's used this staircase in forever. And so I was like, is that Meryl? Like, is she doing shit for Clotho? Like world walking? Because it was very specifically a priestess, and we don't really see priestesses in Crescent City. And I don't know, with all the suspicious stuff with Clotho and Meryl, I was like, this is very weird.
That could be interesting. I think there's definitely more to them. And the mother, especially being very feminine and attached to this feminine order, and how much
Yeah.
they keep coming back to the three sisters. Like,
And the word marks, the like,
yeah, anything that's related to that, like, seems significant in some capacity.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so I think we're a little short on time, right?
Do you want to do a lightning round on the last couple ones?
Yeah.
And then we'll start
Yeah.
putting bookmarks for next time.
Yeah.
Yes. No, we want you guys. I tell you, when you are done with Throne of Glass or even Crescent City, like we want your thoughts. So
We'll let you know.
yes. Okay, Melanie, you lead it off because
Right.
I'm trying.
All right, I'm trying to, yeah. Do you
I
think
know what I
Nesta
want.
is more powerful than Reese? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes,
Me too.
absolutely. I
Thank
don't
you.
think she knows how to use it, and I don't think she knows it yet, but 100%.
Yeah. More powerful than his magic, than any of theirs, as Cassian said. Um, what do you think about Cassian never saying I love you or biting the biscuit or giving her goodbye kisses or anything? Do you think, because the fandom is like, oh, he loves her in actions, he doesn't need to do that stuff.
No, not the way she writes. Again, her
Mhm.
her OTP characters, that ain't it.
Yep.
But I think it's all subtle. I don't think like I think it's all subconscious, even where it's just more little signs something's not quite.
Best bet I'm putting this on the Facebook page because I've fought with so many people. I was like, no, this is not how Sarah writes endgame people. Like,
That to me is why I think it's the most damning.
thank you. Yeah. Do you think it's realistic that the Valkyries won the blood right? That's another huge thing in the fandom.
I think it's decent because the blood right is definitely supposed to be something that if you are a true like an Illyrian who has been training, you are supposed to be able to do, but I think it also indicates that a lot of the blood right is not necessarily just about physical brawn. It is about your
the Bat
teamwork,
Boys
your
won with-
cleverness.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the reason, like, they won, I don't think it's supposed to be insurmountable unless you've had, like, a decade of hard physical manual training. I think it's, like, it would be considerably easier and more in line with their goals, but I think at the end of the day, the blood right is also meant to test, or also could test multiple things, and it's not impossible if you are not coming at it from like it's one of those things too where a lot of times there's a lot of things where people will be like, oh, this is so hard, there's no way you could ever do this, and then inevitably like it's in a male dominated field and then a woman comes along and figures out how to do it in half the time with half the effort or something like that, because
and they get so mad.
yeah,
like, there's no way they could have done this. I was like,
yeah, it's just different styles of problem solving a lot of the time, or culturally you are trained to look at things very differently depending on your gender assignment. Like it's just like there's so many reasons that could be. I mean, I can understand I do. One of my biggest pet peeves in fantasy though is when there are like, it's been 6 weeks and now you can compete with anyone who's been waiting for 20 years. Like I don't love that trope. I really find that tremendously immersion breaking, and Pharaoh dances around that quite.
Yep.
But also, you know, she has some background of, you know, being outdoorsy, and at least like I can suspend disbelief a little bit more on there. So I like to think that the blood right was also meant to not be necessarily like, if you can't lift, you know, if you haven't spent 20 years lifting, you'll never be able to lift this one thing, and then it doesn't make sense for you to do it. I think there was multiple ways to skin a cat on that one, and I'm, for the sake of staying with the immersion, that's not a deal breaker for me.
It makes sense. It makes sense to me that the one, like, not only because like they were training with like the top Illyrians one-on-one for
that probably helped a lot. That is a thing too. Like if you have
it's like a classroom dynamic when you have like small versus huge and the amount of trainers, and
musically that's kind of a thing too, where there's a difference between I have been in consistent lessons since I was like in like elementary school versus like people there have been a lot of really successful musicians who start college, like who start going for their degree in college and know very little. Like I know a guy who's like a professional opera singer who did not start until college but now is literally going for his math or his doctorate, and like it was able to catch up because he spent that much time in that much intensive training, that you can kind of make up some of that ground if you're really really hardcore applying yourself, and that goes doubly if you're able to spend more time on one-on-one training. So physically there's muscles you can't build, and there's like intuition and just a sense of years of physically doing things, but you might be able to compensate for some other thing. Like there's a lot of give and take on that equation.
And it's like they also used like not only the Illyrian techniques but also the Valkyrie techniques that like the Illyrians weren't learning. And like people
exactly. And that's more where I think it was probably more of a like if you were trying to do it the same way as the guys have been doing it for years and years and years, but if you don't have that set expectation that you have to do it that way, that opens up so much more for you to think outside the box and problem solve.
People think that, like the Illyrians were also novices. It's not like they were these huge. So it's like the younger Illyrians, like who are first getting into like these units and all of this stuff. It's like it's not like people like Nesta and I mean like Azrael and Cassian that they're fighting against. Like people think it's all these huge warriors that have been through wars and all this stuff that they're fighting against, and it's like not. It's like they're like the younger
boot camp. That's not nothing, but they're not.
They're like, not. They're like
they have in the field intuition probably.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Oh, you liked this question. You wanted this question. Okay, so there was a weird conversation in Hofast with Azrael where he mentions Cassian wanting kids now. Do you think it'll happen? And if they're fighting, why do you think that even was mentioned?
No, I think very sadly we're not going to get any Cassian Nesta kids. I think I don't know. I don't see it happening. And I also don't think like that was something Nesta was like wanting to prioritize the way like Feyre really was. Like the number of times like Feyre seems to, in Feyre's POV, the fact we don't have children are rare. We don't have like that comes up so much from her POV. She really seems to focus and always point that out, whereas that doesn't really happen with Nesta.
People are just pointing out that like, oh, Nesta changed her anatomy, so they're gonna have kids. And I was like,
no, I think she was planning on it. I think she's anticipating that eventually down the road, of course, want to at some time, but I don't think it's going to happen before the next couple of books go down.
Do you think the Azrael and Nesta scenes in Hofast were more sibling friend or romance coded?
I'm definitely more sibling friend. I think she and Cassie spent enough time that Azrael's there, and they are friends, but I also think he has like kind of a respect for her, but I think Azrael's detriment is that he's surrounded by so many strong personalities. He is not gonna necessarily just put himself in there, so I think that's why he seems more gentle and maybe more personable to her, is he's just kind of like, I think you're cool. I think you're fine, and you just got some shit to work through.
We gave like Rune and Bryce to me, so I feel like
yes, I think that's a really good comparison.
Thank you. I think you already answered this, but just to clarify for the people in the back, do you think Nesta's a Gwenriel or Elriel shipper?
Gwen
and Az or Elena and Az?
I think she'd be on board with it. I think she likes both Azrael and Gwen, that I think she'd be perfectly like, heck yeah, let's go.
Ribbon Az.
Yeah, and I think she's been like wanting to see Gwen be able to feel comfortable and knowing that Azrael's like the person who she's able to be confident around and feel more comfortable. So I think she'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. That tracks.
Oh, I love that so much.
I do too.
What do you think Nesta stole from the cauldron?
I think, from the cauldron?
Yeah. They're like, she stole something and it wanted it back, and the mother stopped it from taking whatever it was back.
I think it's not necessarily anything specific so much as just so much of its power. And literally somehow some of its essence, she pulled out its essence, like, and its ability, like specifically its ability to create things, to make things made. I think it's something along those lines where the cauldron does give you gifts, and they're probably like, oh yeah,
like Elaine.
Yeah, they're like, well, we'll give her something like that. And Nesta, like it was trying to hand her something, and she ripped off a whole arm essentially. Like, and it was like, you were not supposed to have that. Excuse you. And And I think that that's what fundamentally changed her and made her so much different, is that she literally foundationally stole some of its essence somehow, just in terms of like her personality. Usually when you're talking magic, you were talking about that mental strength and that mental ability, and her whole, and that's why I think her whole thing where she's like, she's deeper, she's dangerous, she feels things, is full of this. She is psychologically programmed and built for heavy duty magic use and heavy duty magic wielding, and that's why she's able to like, and they did it in the worst possible way too, where she's going out kicking and screaming, so her whole primal everything, she is high on cortisol, she is, everything in her body is saying survival instinct, and she has this latent capacity for that power. Of course she's taking that.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say really quickly that it might also circle back to a Tog thing, but I think she took Deanna's Moonfire from the Cauldron because that was also Silver Flames. Deanna's like an evil god in Tog, and her power came from Silver Flames. And yeah, I think because Nesta acted so feral and, you know, angry in the Cauldron, that it like took that power from that god after the gods were destroyed or whatever. But I think she took Deanna's Moonfire, and that's why Amryn is like, oh, I can train your magic, oh, I can help you with this, oh, I can do this, because Amryn's also like a god / immortal, and I think she might know where it comes from. Type thing.
Natalie, what is one thing that you want to say to the fandom about Nesta, or anything that you want to tell us? What is something that has been on your mind?
I do want to say I love how many people have responded so wonderfully to Nesta. She's such a wonderfully complex character, and I think she represents so much that a lot of, you know, if the older sisters in us, and
yes,
you know, just the people who again feel things very deeply and have felt like slightly out of place for feeling and existing and taking up space and not wanting to just shrink down, but want to be heard and seen and be a well-rounded person who's allowed to be whoever they want to be. I think she represents that so well, and I think that's why she resonates so strongly. So I love every time people see that in her, and who feel like I was able to do that justice. Like I know how important she is. So I'm so grateful for everyone who's enjoyed my take on her and has enjoyed it so much. I love seeing the cosplay and the TikToks, like the people who are like cosplaying and using the graphic audio to perform. Like, it means the world to see that. That is really such a wonderful and cool moment to be a part of her, and I just appreciate everyone who's been so welcoming.
I love that.
I need to do like yes or no questions real quick. I have 3 or 4 maybe. Okay. Do you think Valaris is going to be Dust Court?
No.
Do you think Nesta will own her own Pegasus?
Yeah.
Who do you think Selin Drake is? Do you think it's Helion, like the fandom theorizes? That smutty author that Nesta loves.
Oh, the author, right. I was like, wait, okay, I know the name. Where
everyone thinks it's Helion.
No, I would laugh really hard if it was like Meryl, though, like
yes!
that outlet or something like that. It turns out she's just the filthiest, you know, like,
bottom.
Yeah,
that's usually how it goes. It's going to be one of the priestesses.
Oh, that just made my day. That is like the best. Okay, keep going.
Do you think Rhys holds any sort of sway over the inner circle's minds for his own use?
Ooh, possibly subconsciously. I don't know I think it's possible, but I don't know if I'm sold that it would be intentional. Like his powers are either happening without his control, either that or his penchant to be like, I know better.
Yeah,
just let me do this for you. That's how I would see the context of that happening.
I don't know about the rest of the inner circle, but I do 100% think that he has some sort of switch in Feyre's mind, just from like the whole her forgetting her own memories thing, and like the 180s that she does is very weird to me. And it always turns out to be like whatever Rhys ultimately wanted to happen, which is very odd to me. But yeah, that was that. Okay. If you had anything to say to Nesta haters, what would it be?
Oh, give her a chance. And also, again, remember we have unreliable narrator POV. So context is really, really important. Nesta might also be like someone, Nesta's very realistic to a lot of women who have gone through a lot of like really strict expectations and boundaries, and is probably trying to figure out ways to healthily deconstruct that. It doesn't mean you have to be best friends or even be like, this is my favorite character. But as long as you can appreciate, like, I would say give her a chance to appreciate her as a well-rounded, well-written character, even if you don't necessarily relate to her or think you would like be BFFs. And that's the biggest thing with writing, is as wonderful as a lot of romantasy books are too, there's always the trap that you want the protagonist to be like you for you to be able to relate to them, and you want to be able to insert yourself into that. Nothing wrong with that, but that does not necessarily mean the character is poorly written or is not bad if you don't necessarily see yourself in every single character, and just be sure to give them a fair shot as well. Which again, I'm not here to yuck anyone's yum or to ask that you have to like love every, like, because not every book, not every character is going to work for everyone. Totally fine. But just anything you can
respectful.
Anything you can do to not make sure you are dismissing that there could be something really good that you could still enjoy and you could still get something out of, because Nesta still offers a really good insight into people who are hurt, people who are going through substance abuse, people who are deconstructing, people who are dealing with really strict gender expectations and stuff like that. And there's often not that clean way to coming back from that. Again, that like Reese and a lot of the inner court are expecting. And again, you don't have to be best friends with them, but there's a lot of very good lessons to learn from how Nesta's arc progresses and how you learn about her mental health journey and what recovery and what healthy boundaries look like for her. That I don't want people to miss out on.
So much. Last question. So of course, you don't think Nestian is endgame, like, yeah. But do you think that Nesta will end up with somebody else, like in a romantic sense, like, and with like her own little happy ever after in love?
As much as I love the notion of turning kind of expectation on its head, like I like the thought of the expectation turning over, but for Sarah as a writer, I absolutely think she's lining up the cards for something. I fully believe that's coming. I really like your Cormac theory. I think there's a lot of ground there. Part of me does kind of like to see like if maybe Eris has some role to play in that. It'll be interesting. So I don't feel like I have anyone I'm willing to make a bet on yet. But I do think she's absolutely all the pieces. The gut feeling is yes. Who knows?
Yeah. Just not Cassian.
Cassian! I'm gonna read the next book, and my first message is gonna go to Natalie and just gonna like lament our love for Cassian. And
Please do. I'll probably be right there with you.
Character. I just don't. He's a good character. He's a bad mate.
Yeah. He's not even a bad mate. He's just not Nesta's mate.
Yeah, he's not.
Well said. I really like that. Thank you.
Maybe for more, he would have done more. Or Tanwin. Like, I didn't even get into the Tanwin thing, but
no, Natalie, you're so awesome. Just absolutely. Like, and if you ever want to vent or text, like, reach out. We loved having you. We would love to have you again.
Yeah, I would love to keep you posted once I get through more of the books and I have more context, and then I'll have more.
Oh, Natalie, I can't believe. Do you think the OG Valkyries are alive? Because they were never, their bodies weren't seen. I have to ask you this before we go because I can't let it go.
I don't know. I don't think so, or maybe
they disappeared under the peak, and I was like,
I mean, I love the idea of them being tied to the priestesses somehow, and maybe like the priestesses were started by them as a way to quietly keep their like to not lose everything and to keep something going. But I don't think so. But then again, I could very easily see them being a part of, again, that Avengers Endgame, you know.
Yeah, and then ultimately walk in death. Because the wording thing where it was like, oh, they like disappeared and like they were never seen again. And I was like, was that a portal? Like, is that sort of thing? Because me and Eka have this whole thing where like Cassian had to be tied down to a wagon as to not to try to save Tanwyn from that last war. And I was like, Tanwyn was his true mate, I think. And I just don't think he wants to come face to face with the fact that like Nesta isn't, like whether he knows or not. But I'm like, that was very mate bond coded how they had to beat him up and tie him down for him not to go and try to like protect Tanwyn, which is like obviously his old girlfriend. One of the
I think there's definitely that's a good theory. I mean, and also Cassian feels his feelings very strongly as well, and is very bullheaded. So
like every time the Valkyries came up, he got weird. I'm like, the manuscript thing where he was like,
do you think Tanwyn was his real mate, Natalie? Just be honest.
That would explain why he can't necessarily be Nesta's mate, or like he at least not without some magical
reinforcements.
Yeah, that's one explanation for it.
I love that. That was so cute.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I didn't gush about that. Validation, guys. Anyway, this was so much fun. We definitely gonna have you back after you read Tog.
Yes. Absolutely. I'll let you know.
I think I sent you a couple of my reels on.
Yes, I did.
Through the podcast page.
Yeah, because that was how I learned about the Cormac stuff for the first time. Was you going through it and I went, oh, this is a whole new rabbit hole I have not heard about yet. Let's go.
Yeah, there's a lot of rabbit holes that we...
Oh, catch me sending you the Tanwyn reel and all the reels I've just...
For Natalie?
You're gonna get bombarded with reels, just so you know. Take your time, though. It's no rush.
Oh my God. Well, you know what? I bet you could say your piece too, but like from an oldest daughter who absolutely sees herself in Nesta, and this is the most felt or most seen I've ever felt in a character that an author has ever written either. And then just listening to you, truly, like you said, put a voice to it, and you did it so beautifully and just captured Nesta. I mean, everything, even just talking to you, it's like talking to Nesta. It's incredible. Like your personality, they could not have picked a better Nesta if they tried. There's nobody else who can do it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Because like your voice was in my head before I ever knew about the graphic audio. Like your voice is Nesta.
Yeah, and you're so talented, and we can't wait to see how your career unfolds and where you go with everything that you're involved in. So thank you so much for coming on our podcast. We really appreciate you.
Pleasure. This was so much fun. Thank you.
Natalie, hopefully we talk to you again.
I hope so. Thank you
so much,
Bye,
Natalie.
guys.
Bye. Bye.
Oh, that was fun.